City Council meeting of June 23rd, 2025. Members of the public are invited to attend in-person meetings in council chambers. Public access is also available by telephone by using the call-in numbers posted on the meeting agenda. Tonight's meeting will be broadcast on the city's YouTube channel online. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Leidy.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Luke Manharamasa will be absent. Councilmember Burns.
Here.
Councilmember Jaramillo.
Here.
Councilmember Kondo.
Here.
Councilmember Roper.
Here.
Councilmember Goff.
Here.
Councilmember Nowicki.
Here.
Councilmember Walker.
Here.
Thank you.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. City Manager Guyer, are there any responses to resident inquiry?
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any agenda additions or deletions tonight? No. All right, moving into public invited to be heard. This is an opportunity for public comment on any item not set for public hearing. Statements are limited to 5 minutes per speaker. Statements must be related to city business and limited to matters of community interest. City Clerk Small, is there anyone signed up tonight?
Yes, Madam Mayor, there is one individual on the list, and that is Tom Lampo.
All right, welcome. Please state your name and address and provide your comments to council.
Hello to North Glen. Hello to everybody. It's good to see you again. A lot is happening in our world, and I know at times it seems as though everything is out of control, but in reality, things are coming loose to so exposure can be made and freedom can be achieved. I'm Tom Lampo, 3951 Jackson Way. God is in control, and I'm here to lift up North Glen in prayer. Please join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, in Jesus' name, we invite you here to North Glen to be our God. There's nothing that surprises you. You created the beginning, and you can see far off into the future. Your hand has moved through the centuries to bring us to this very moment in time. And because you are who you are, we give you all praise, glory, and honor. In Revelations 4:11, it states, "You are worthy, O Lord our God, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and they exist because you created what you pleased." It pleased you to create us and to put us here at this time. Guide us in our lives, and let us never forget to extend the mercy you've shown to us to those we come in contact with. Father, I lift up to you all those that call North Glen home. We're all created by you, and we have had many influences that have come into our lives throughout our years. We have formed different opinions into every situation. We're all aware of the conflicts here in our nation as well as around the world. All of us have been affected. Lives have been shattered, and lives have been lost. We all want peace, but we can't decide how to achieve it. We easily grow weary with the calamity that surrounds us. Comfort those that have been directly affected by the recent tragedies. Bring peace to those and to those around them. There's good advice found for our lives in 1 Chronicles 16:11 as it states, "Seek the Lord and his strength, seek his presence continually." Give us your strength and give us your presence. We need to be surrounded by you so you can have influence in our lives. We need to do better to those around us. As you look at us, you are pleased with your creation. Help us make decisions that please you and bring peace to our hurting world. You are our God, and we are your people. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you, guys. Have a nice night.
Thank you. Is there anyone who didn't sign up but would still like a chance to talk to council? No? Okay. Is there anyone on the phone who would like to speak to council? You may press *6 to unmute at this time. Okay. Moving forward, we have a few proclamations tonight. So, actually, we have one. We have a couple other presentations and things tonight, but if council wants to join me down front. I need my glasses. We're all very excited about the new riser that was added. Doesn't take much, so. All right, so I would like to invite members of our Parks, Recreation, and Culture Department to come forward to accept our proclamation tonight. Yeah, oh, rocking the summer shirt, I love it. Okay, before I read the proclamation, I'm going to pass the mic so you can introduce yourself. So tell us your name and your position with the city.
Deb Lawson, Recreation Supervisor.
Cassie Riggle, Recreation Coordinator.
Roman Ortega, Sports Coordinator.
Willis Waterhouse, Parks Manager.
Cindy Makula, Guest Relations at the Northglenn Recreation Center.
Amanda Peterson, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Culture.
Melanie Flores, Guest Services over at the Rec Center.
Sarah Devi-Schley, the Aquatics Coordinator. Karen Carrillo, Fitness Instructor.
Sarah Soderberg, Recreation Marketing Assistant.
I'm also Sarah Schwalier, and I'm the Fitness Coordinator.
Not Sarah, I'm Karen. Karen Keeney, Park Ranger.
Justin Purdue, Recreation Manager.
Good evening. My name is Ren Tran Ryder. I am the Assistant Technical Director in the theater.
Hello, Jesse Meshevich, Project Manager.
Daniel Morey, the Technical Director at the theater.
And I'm Michael Stricker, the Arts, Culture, and Community Manager for the city.
Thank you for being here, spending a little bit of your Monday evening with us. So we are celebrating National Parks and Recreation Month in the city. Whereas July has been designated by the National Recreation and Park Association as National Parks and Recreation Month. And whereas 2025 marks the 40th anniversary of this national observance, celebrating the work of more than 160,000 full-time parks and recreation professionals, as well as countless part-time staff and volunteers who create and maintain essential community parks, facilities, and programs. And whereas this year's theme, Build Together, Play Together, highlights the power of community collaboration in building accessible, inclusive, and sustainable parks, programs, and places where people of all ages and abilities can play, grow, and connect. And whereas Northglenn's Parks and Recreation staff, community volunteers, and residents work together to nurture vibrant open spaces, from the city's 35-plus miles of greenway trails and the sports fields at Northwest Open Space and J.C. Park to the family gathering areas at E.B. Raines Jr. Memorial Park, all of which help weave the fabric of community health and social well-being. And whereas recreation programs foster youth development, support healthy lifestyles, strengthen community bonds, and improve mental wellness for residents of every age. And whereas the City of Northglenn acknowledges the essential contribution of local park and recreation personnel and volunteers in making our parks safe, welcoming, and enjoyable for all. Now, therefore, I, Meredith Leidy, Mayor of the City of Northglenn, Colorado, do hereby proclaim July as National Parks and Recreation Month in the City of Northglenn. I encourage all residents to participate in the spirit of this year's theme by building together and playing together, Please also take time to recognize and thank our Parks and Recreation professionals for their tireless work in fostering a stronger, healthier, and more connected community. Dated at North Glen, Colorado, this 23rd day of June 2025. So does anyone want to add to it or speak? Amanda?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say thank you to this team, as well as everyone who wasn't able to be here tonight, and to our community members who get to participate in all of the programming from aquatics to sports to arts and culture and everything in between throughout the year. We do have some free offerings this month in celebration of Parks and Recreation Month, so check out the calendar, and we hope to see you out there playing and connecting.
All right, everybody ready? Smile. Don't blink. Say, Parks and Rec. Parks and Rec. And culture. Culture. All right. All right, well, let's report. Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have our June Neighborhood Beautification Awards, which is why we have extra guests today, so welcome. So I would like to invite Community Outreach Coordinator Jenna Gregg forward. She's going to present, and do you have a process that we want to use? Do you want people to stay for a group photo or no?
Yeah, so we'll have individuals come up once we announce their name and house. Once you see the picture, come up, we'll do an individual photo, and then once everyone's been announced, then we'll do a group photo at the end, if that works.
Okay, and this is a new thing, and I wonder if we should rearrange ourselves so that we can still see council when we have guests in front. No, I think I step down and you guys stay up there, but I just don't want you hidden, is what I'm noticing. I don't know. We're going to have to figure it out.
We'll move people for the group.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll be okay for the individual.
All right. Well, I'm going to do a quick introduction. Hello, Mayor Leiter, council members, and everyone else joining us this evening. My name is Jenna Gregg, and I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator for this city. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present the awards for the North Glen Neighborhood Beautification Program this evening. For those who don't know, this program was established in 1998 to recognize residents who have done an outstanding job of making their homes and yards beautiful. The city is divided then into 8 separate areas, and nominations are received from residents and neighbors throughout the community. We then have 8 volunteer judges make their way through each street throughout the city to determine that month's winners. And winners are chosen by the judges throughout the summer. So this is our first one of the year, June, July, and August. They receive a large lawn sign to display for a month. And then our city council, you all recognize the winners at the summer meetings. They receive a framed certificate and a commemorative yard sign. The North Glen residents can receive an award for the following categories. We have our traditional yard of the month, awarded to typically grass lawns with a weed-free, well-kept lawn and healthy trees and flowers. We also recognize water-wise yards of the month, awarded in accordance with our citywide water conservation efforts. These yards use less turf, more water-tolerant plants, flowers, trees, and shrubs. And water-wise yards also tend to include additional use of rock, mulch, and other landscaping materials. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to present the 15 June winners of our North Glen Neighborhood Beautification Program. I only had 3 confirmed, but if anyone else I missed, please come on up when I mention your name. You'll get your certificate and photo with the mayor and council. And then at the end, as I mentioned previously, we'll do one big group photo with all of the winners who are in attendance. So let's get started. First off, we're going to go through our traditional yards of the month. We have Maria Chavez at 11072 Clayton Street. I don't believe Maria came this evening, but let's give her a round of applause. Next, we have 2021 East 112th Place with Rhonda and Jeff Baker, who also could not make it this evening. But look at that lovely lawn. Next up, we have 11831 Clarkson Court. We have Trudy Utt, and she was very sad she could not make it this evening, but we do want to honor her lawn. There we go. Next in our Yard of the Month category, we have 1167 East 111th Place, Marcelino and Alberta Baca. They said they were going to try, but I don't see them here this evening. Congratulations to them. Next up, we have in Yard of the Month, 11069 Pearl Circle, Stephen and Janine Lee. And I do believe we have Janine in the audience this evening. We'd love to have you come on up. Come meet the mayor, get your certificate. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's an honor.
Put you both right there in the middle.
And it was a team effort.
Well, everybody will know because you'll put the sign in the yard, right? All right, 1, 2, 3, everybody smile. I want a couple more because I'm paranoid about blinking. That's really what it is. Thank you.
And a corner lot as well. I will say the grass goes around both sides. It's incredible. Next up, we have 346 Wallace Street with Jim Mondonato, who I did not hear from, so could not make it this evening. But congratulations to Jim. Our next winner is 1124 Spangler Drive, Deanna Lucero and Paul Lopez, and they were able to join us this evening. Come on up. Making it work.
You can come in along. Okay. I can see everybody. I think I'm good. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Smile. All right. Last one. Great. Thank you.
All right. Maybe. There we go. All right. Our last yard of the month is at 556 Niver Avenue with Bob and Lori Warren, and they were not able to join us this evening. We'll take a look at their beautiful lawn. On to our water-wise yards of the month. We start with 3168 East 106th Avenue with Lauren Shoemaker. Lauren, would you like to join us up top?
Did you do it on your own, or did you have one of the programs?
It was through the Resource Central.
That's great. Okay, I can see everyone. Say cheese. Actually, say pretty flower. More appropriate. Okay, thank you.
All right. Continuing on with waterwise, we have a lovely example of rock here. 11875 East 119th Place. We have John Armstrong, who could not make it this evening. Well, let's congratulate him. Next up, I will mention that this is artificial turf, if you're like, it's so green. But it's 11821 McCrum Drive with Dwayne Emmett. And the judge here said that Dwayne probably wouldn't be able to make it out. He's an elderly gentleman, but he was so thrilled to win this award. And it's a good example of different ways to do waterwise here. Next up, we have 10512 Franklin Street, and this is Charlie Heimer. Charlie was also not able to make it this evening. I think we've had everyone join us this evening, but we'll still recognize everyone that we've got left. Next up at 10761 Blue Jay Lane, we have Don Mays. Was not here. Yeah. And 1330 West 102nd Place, we have John Bachman. Another good example of rock. I want to make sure John didn't come because he said he might. Okay. And then we had 10222 Monterey Circle, Letitia Escorza. Also said she might make it, but I don't see her. All right, but congratulations to Letitia. I believe that is it for our neighborhood beautification program for June. So thank you, Council, for recognizing the winners who are here this evening. Our three winners, would you please join us up front for a group photo? You can bring your certificate if you want. You don't have to.
Hey, smile big. It's Facebook. It's important. All right, smile. Okay, one of those should work. Thank you very much.
Okay, our next presentation is our 2024 audit. Deputy City Manager and Finance Director Jason Loveloom will introduce this item.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just want to take a quick moment to introduce the city's auditor, Paul Niedermüller with CliftonLarsonAllen. He's here to present on the audit findings for the 2024 audit. Just want to say thank you to, this was a new team, CLA, for the city this year, and I just want to say thank you to their expertise and professionalism through this audit this year. I also want to thank the finance staff, especially Joanne Koenig, our Deputy Finance Director, for really leading the charge on the project. So just a shout out to the team that was involved this year. And then A future item on the agenda, under the consent agenda, is the CR 55, which is the acceptance of the audit. And so I just wanted to mention that this presentation is coming first, and then that acceptance is coming secondarily, but I wanted to mention that they're all connected together. So thank you, and hand it over to Paul.
Well, thank you, and good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of City Council. Again, Paul Niedermuller, your external auditing firm. I did have a slide. I'm hoping, there we go, see, magic. I wanted to go over kind of the audit process and really kind of dive into that, how we got to this conclusion remarks, and then highlight some financial items, and then there's some required communications. I'm happy to take questions at any point during the presentation, and really want to go through the financial statement audit first. We issued an unmodified opinion, and translation of that, a clean opinion in all material respects. So we receive the information from the city prepares the financial statements, we review that information, and we opined on that in a clean opinion as a result of your financial statement. So a job well done. There's a single audit in the middle column that deals with the federal funds. As a recipient of more than $750,000 of federal funds, you're required to undergo a more comprehensive audit, making sure that you comply with federal guidelines as a result of receiving those funds. So we go through that compliance to make sure that you have complied in all material respects, and we're happy to report that there were no findings or recommendations, and you did not have any items of note to governance related to your being a recipient of federal funds. The program that we looked at this year related to COVID-19, some of the funding that you got from the state and local fiscal recovery funds. So again, a very positive result for council related to your federal funds. And then finally, communication relates to the governance communication. This is kind of the playbook, the Cliff Note version of kind of the back and forth. I said in the beginning, we work for you, but we work directly with management in order to get the financial results. So any of those conversations that we have, we're required to come back to you to make sure that you understand the scope of the work and any disagreements or any difficulties we had as it relates to the audit process. And then finally, internal control communications. If part of our evaluation of your controls and systems, if there's anything that comes to our attention that could cause a material weakness or deficiencies in reporting, we would be required to report that at this time. Just a couple highlights on your financial statements themselves. You'll see, the fund balance as a percentage of expenditures. So you take all your expenditures, and this is your fund balance or your equity. So in 2024, that was 45.8%, down from 53.2% in the previous fiscal year. And you'll see kind of the highlights between the two different years in terms of the reduction in fund balance, as well as the expenditures were much lower in 2024 as compared to 2020. Higher in 2024 as compared to 2023. Investments in infrastructure. Again, a government acquires assets and uses assets for the public beneficiaries. So your investment in the infrastructure is an important aspect, and a kind of a barometer would be if you're spending more money than you're annually depreciating. And so this kind of gives you a highlight of how much money you spent within the governmental activities as well as the business type activities. And you'll see both of the numbers of the additions or the infrastructure improvements were exceeded the amount of depreciation in the governmental activities, almost 22 million versus depreciation of 5.9. And then in the business type or the enterprise funds, utility funds, $10.5 million versus a depreciation expense of 4.3 million. Components of fund balance. If you start on the left side of the slides, those are kind of the most restrictive or non-spendable. By its nature, you cannot spend it again. Restricted determines by external parties. Somebody gives you money for a grant or other obligations, you have to spend it in terms of what they do. Committed relates to assignment or committed by council for future projects that has been already set aside. And then finally, the component of unassigned fund balance. So this is a general fund that kind of breaks out those various categories. And you'll see the majority of your funds are either committed or unassigned as you kind of move forward in terms of spending authority, et cetera. I mentioned in the beginning required communications. Anytime there's a change in accounting policy, we're required to discuss that with council, because you can imagine if you change your policy and you say, hey, we're going to do something different, it can have a different financial statement impact, and you can't really compare apples to apples. So we wanted to highlight, as required by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, or GASB, 101 was implemented. This deals with compensated absences. And compensated absences were always accrued for in the past, but only the amount that you had to pay it to liquidate at termination. The change in the standards deals with other types of leave where you have the ability to use, and the concept of more likely than not being able to use it would have to also be accrued as a liability and not necessarily paid upon termination. So that increased the liability overall under compensated absences by a marginal amount, but something that was expected, because you do have some benefits that can be used and not necessarily liquidated upon termination or separation from the city. Difficulties in performing, in fact, it was the complete opposite. We did not have any difficulties in performing the audit. I do want to highlight, we have a quality control process, and our quality reviewer thought your financial statements were the cleanest they've seen in this cycle. So again, your financial positions are well laid out, well documented, and very transparent in terms of your activities, and that was called out by somebody who does this in a very regular basis. So I just wanted to bring that to council's attention as well. We do have 2 uncorrected misstatements, and what these relate to is, again, not material items, but things that management elected to pass on, and we agreed to because it was not a material misstatement. The first one deals with the beginning net position. This relates to the accounting principle changes that described in County 101, GASB 101. These are $352,000 of liabilities that employees have earned, but not necessarily be paid, and the adoption of that new standard required an implementation of $352,000, which was recognized in the current year. And the other item relates to premium, amortization of a premium. The city has been electing to do it on the straight line basis, and generally accepted accounting principles require the effective rate method. And if you think about what the effective rate method is, when you get a premium on a bond, you're basically taking a coupon rate that's higher than the market rate, and so you get a premium back in terms of cash, and so that premium is almost like prepaid interest, and so that needs to be amortized as you pay interest. So the higher the interest amount is, the more the amortization, and not on a straight line basis. So that was, again, an immaterial amount, but it was something that we did note going forward. Corrected misstatements, again, no corrected misstatements, no disagreements, and we, in your packet, have attached the management letter. Again, I want to highlight that we did not have any findings or recommendations for the 2024 audit, and it was extremely smooth, and we appreciate your leadership and transparency and governance over the financial matters. Your role in the audit and the financial is a crucial part of government, and I applaud you and continue up the good work. At this point, I will address any questions. I did have some additional slides related to upcoming standards for the Governmental Accounting Standard Board that management is aware of, just for your knowledge and education as we go forward. At this point, I'd be happy to address any specific questions.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Kondo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for presenting. I'm aware of CLA through my role as former treasurer of Dr. Cog, so really appreciate the third-party outside eyes kind of looking at what we're doing to make sure that we're obviously in conformance with policy. I am curious about the whole GASB 101 change, and my question is, how do cities kind of keep track of all that to kind of be aware so that they can then change their practices so that it's not kind of, it falls through the cracks, so to speak?
In terms of, maybe more specific on term?
Yeah, so you had 2 misstatements, right? So the first one had to do with a net position for governmental activities.
Yeah.
And I believe, listening to what you said and reading the report, you're saying that the genesis of that was the GASB standard changing?
Yes.
So how do cities kind of stay on top of that in terms of changes in requirement?
Sure, it's a great question, and let me clarify my comment on the city was on top of the change in the accounting standard, and because they did not implement it last year, you have to go back and retroactively apply it. And so the city performed the analysis to see the amount of impact that it had on the beginning of the year as well as the end of the year. And we worked together collaboratively to say that it's not material enough to restate. So it was not something that the city did not prepare for or was not ready for. It was just the way we treated the change in the accounting standard. We ran the activity through the current period.
Okay. And then, as an auditor, do you partner and work with the city to kind of keep track of all these changes as we move forward?
Which is one of the things that I brought into your packet and have communicated to the management as well, the importance of understanding the change in the accounting standards. And so, yes, we would partner with them. We would, be at the sounding board in terms of implementation of upcoming standards, and something that the city has utilized CLA over the past 6 months in that regard.
Great. One last question, and that would be about the second issue, and I'm just trying to understand it. I think you started to explain it a little bit in terms of the amortization of debt premium. And the way I'm thinking at it in my mind is when you think about straight line depreciation, you're depreciating an asset just by dividing the number of years of lifespan.
Yes.
So when it comes to a debt issuance, is what you just kind of described kind of like an accelerated depreciation sort of methodology? Could you expand on that a little bit more?
Absolutely. So this is a little bit of a complicated item, but I'll try to do my best of explaining it. So when you issue a bond, there's a coupon rate, which is the stated rate on the bond issue, and then there's also a market rate. So if the market rate is lower than your coupon rate, so the coupon rate is what you're going to be paying, you would receive a premium. And the way I would look at it is almost like prepaid interest. So you get additional cash by exchanging future higher interest rates on coupon rates. And so the way it's supposed to be amortized is based upon the expense that you incurred during that year. So any type of debt, let's say you use a $10 million debt, you would have more interest in the beginning. And so you would amortize more of the credit in the beginning to kind of match that premium component. If you did it straight line, you would have the same credit in the first year versus the last year, and by the time the last year, you may not have enough interest expense to cover that premium. You would have a negative position. So that the proper treatment is to match the premium with the interest expense paid on an annual basis.
Gotcha. So I guess the way you could think about it is like your home mortgage over time, you're paying less and less on the interest rate and starting to pay more on the principal.
Yes.
Over the life of the loan.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. Thank you for explaining that.
Councilmember Nowicki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for being here, sir, and thank you for your report. Just one question with regard to the uncorrected pieces. What is the threshold used to determine whether an adjustment is needed?
There's a lot of factors, and it's not always quantitative. There is also qualitative. We typically would not describe, what our threshold is because, of course, management would look at that. But if they were significantly under what we would determine to be a item that would cause a restatement or an adjustment.
Okay, it's like the secret sauce. Huh?
A little bit. I mean, most organizations use anywhere from 0.5 to 2% of kind of your assets or revenue. That's kind of a general rule in the accounting industry.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Don't have any more questions. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you.
We will move into council communications. Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Congratulations to Parks and Rec staffs, and congratulations to everyone on their Yard Beautification Awards. That was really fun. Best part of the summer. Thank you so much to our staff for a great Juneteenth event. It was hot. Everyone turned out. The lemonade was excellent. It was really fun. 10 out of 10. Would recommend. I think it gets bigger and better every year. Thank you so much to our police department for staffing and protecting the community. We've had a couple big events over the last couple of days. So shout out and please wear sunscreen, officers, in the sun. Okay, and then a couple of things. CCPP, we had a great meeting. We had our new member join us for the first official time, sitting up here on the dais. We had really great conversation and talked about sort of, Councilmember Kondo came in and sat and sort of just ran through CRM, talked about general projects that we're working on and planning for the year. So pretty good discussion. I also attended the Coffee with the Chiefs, which was awesome at Gunther Tootie's. Great turnout. Food was great. Chief was great. It was awesome. Sorry I missed the photo, but I had to duck out. And so thank you. That was all I have to say.
Thank you. Councilmember Walker?
Just want to thank Tom Lampo for his beautiful words. That is it.
Thank you. Councilmember Nowicki?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I attended the NSO board meeting. We just discussed kind of business as usual right now, a lot of different activities going on. And also they discussed if there's any seniors that need any additional support, that they have a fund kind of set aside to help with some of those issues. So if there's any seniors out there that, again, need additional support, to reach out to the North Glen Senior Organization. I too also attended the Juneteenth celebration. Thank you to all the city staff, the artists, performers, vendors, and all who attended. Special thanks to the Dice Board as well. I think they did a really great job putting it on, and to all the police who were out there keeping us safe as well. Thanks.
Councilmember Jaramillo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On Wednesday, June 11th, I attended the Adams County Government Sub-Regional Transportation Forum with their Colorado Department of Transportation's 4P discussion. I advocated for the privatization of I-25 to have continuous lanes merging on and exiting off of I-25, because we have a ton of congestion here through the heart of North Glen, which you all know I-25 is the spine of Colorado, but it goes right through the heart of North Glen. So I want to prioritize, of course, safety, air quality, as well as, I got a whole list here. Of course, noise pollution, and making sure our commute to and from work or wherever we're going is smooth and streamlined. Of course, commerce moving smoothly, and also, you know, it's been studied for over a decade. I was made that aware by our own Director of Planning and Development, Brooks Svoboda. He worked with me on this process. Very supportive, gave me history on the whole process, and I collaborated with Thornton, their council member Justin Martinez, and we had a very successful presentation, and I feel that I-25 is going to be receiving more of the prioritization that it needs. And let me see if I missed anything. No, but that was a big time meeting, and we are competing with other municipalities for this funding, and we were one of the first ones to present, and I feel like we really set the bar high. So hopefully I-25 will continue to have that streamline with the continuous exiting and entering lanes. But that was the big event for me the past couple weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Goff?
Thank you, Mayor. So June 11th through the 13th, I attended the CC4CA annual meeting. We had a presentation and a workshop by Dr. Michael Schenk, and it was on storytelling of all things. But it was really about how telling a good story and how you can tell a better story, but that telling good stories can get people to change their minds. And so that would improve our skills in giving testimony to our public officials. And then we also had, for the first time, a panel of state officials. So we had Curtis Morrison, who's from the Deputy Attorney General. He's the Deputy Attorney General. Will Tour from the Colorado Energy Office, and Kelly Watkins from the Governor's Office. She's the Director of Federal Affairs. And so just talked a lot about what the state's doing about funding that we may or may not be getting from the federal government because of changing policies. So it was very informative. And then I did attend 2 ribbon cuttings. On June 14th, one for Discreet Greens. And they, so this is a business in North Glen. People might want to do their business in North Glen. And then the other one was called Infinite Beauty, and that was at the Phoenix Salons in the North Glen Marketplace. So both places I encourage people to visit if that's a service they would need. And then also June 19th, I just wanted to thank everyone for all the help and support we got for June 19th. It was hot, but the performers were great. We had so many people came out to enjoy it. It was a wonderful event. And we also made the news. My daughter-in-law sent me the little clip. I think it was Channel 4 that had somebody out there doing the weather report and kind of did a little story on Juneteenth in North Glen. And I think that's it. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am going to surprise the days by staying on topic on a single theme, and that has to do with bicycling. So here we are. Today, as I was coming in to swim at the rec center, as I normally do every day, I saw that McKinsey and Jean was installing the brand new Bike Keep, just right down the road here. And what I learned is that it is the first in the nation solar-powered bike storage area, which is quite impressive. And the other thing is that North Glen is really a beta test site so we could gather data. When I say we, Jean and McKinsey and their organizations can gather data so then they can turn around to say RTD, for example, or other organizations to justify why it would be worthwhile to put in a bike storage or a bike keep area, which I think is really admirable when we think about the whole challenge of first and last mile. So yours truly downloaded the app and literally locked my e-bike. I think I might be the very first person to do that. But it's quite impressive, and I think there's going to be a ribbon cutting on Wednesday in concert with Dr. Cog. This is my second topic. Dr. Cog has the Bike to Work event on Wednesday morning, and I understand that Becky Smith of Planning and Development is coordinating that, and there will be refreshments, and literally our way station will be right there at that Bike Keep station. So definitely would encourage people to use their cycle to get to work on that day and stop by any way station if possible. At the Juneteenth Festival, I ran into Officer Thompson, and he was on a bicycle. And I asked him how things are going. He just said that recently he came back from the International Police Mountain Bike Association meeting. And at that meeting, he successfully completed the testing and certification as a trainer. And it was very impressive to see him in his bike garb. The pass-fail percent was 90%. So every phase of that training, if you did not get at least 90%, you were done. So very impressive, and again, hats off to Officer Thompson for upping his game and also helping North Glen get on the map in terms of having a certified instructor. I think we're probably one of the few municipalities in the Denver metro area with that sort of talent in our back pocket. And then lastly, on Saturday, as I was walking my dog on the Greenway Trail, I ran into Brian, who is a seasonal park ranger. I don't see Amanda out here. But again, he was on a bicycle, and it was nice to see him out there patrolling and helping users of the trails kind of be in compliance with the rules. I will tell you that I might not have been in compliance with the rule. So he very clearly set me straight, but it's really impressive to see that we as a city are embracing alternative modes of transportation and that we continue, besides having our beautiful net zero or core city hall, that we're also pursuing other technologies. And yet again, tiny but mighty, and always being first at things here in the North Denver metro area. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Roper?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, I want to give a huge shout out to the Public Works and Sanitation Department. They, our neighborhood got together and had a dumpster delivered so that people could do some much needed clean out, and they were so timely, so polite, and it was a wonderful experience, and we all got rid of a lot of stuff. So if you have things at home you need to get rid of, get your neighbors together and you can get a dumpster. Another huge shout out I want to give to the rec center staff. My mother had been going through some health issues, and unbeknownst to me, she decided to start working out. So she does not live in North Glen, but she's heard us talk about it so much. She came to the rec center, and she was so blown away by the politeness, and she felt so welcomed, and so that was a huge success. We had Historic Preservation Commission. We are really working on gathering stories that represent North Glen and really thinking about how we can preserve the legacy that we have, as many of the folks on historic preservation are getting older, and so we want to make sure that we are keeping those stories safe. At the same time, the school district, Adams 12, is celebrating its 75th anniversary this year, so they are asking for any stories, photos, documents, anything that you would like to share, just celebrating the history of North Glen, but also Adams 12. I attended the West Pines Open House, which is a facility near North Glen, and it was wonderful to see. They have 100+ beds to help people. They also have inpatient and outpatient. I attended the end of the Juneteenth celebration, and that was amazing to see. Again, thank you to our police department for being there, and it was a wonderful, safe celebration. The lemonade was delicious. And then lastly, I attended Coffee with the Chiefs. Again, that was amazing, and the cinnamon rolls were enormous. I brought my daughter with me. She was in heaven. It was as big as her head. So it was great to be able to spend time with our chiefs and talk to our citizens. And I believe that is all for me. Oh, I do have one more thing. I have a question for City Manager. Do we have any update on the water? I know several of our citizens are concerned about the water and just what's going on there.
Yes, the water is safe to drink. Some residents are continuing to smell the odor that was brought to our attention on Friday. That will subside within the next couple of days. I am aware that there are comments being placed in YouTube online right now, and what I would recommend is if anyone of our residents have specific concerns, if you can please reach out to me either via email or reach out to your council member on the dais, and they will connect you with me. We will have staff come out and test the water at the specific property to make sure that there's nothing else going on. But we apologize for the inconvenience. This is not typical, but it can happen, as we've explained through social media and on our website, with the rise in temperature and the drawdown in terms of our water supply. That's what's happening, and things can get stirred up that settle at the bottom of the clarifiers. But the water is safe to drink, and we apologize for the odor and the metallic taste is what's been described to me. But the water is safe to drink, and it should get better within the next couple of days. But based on the concerns that are being shared online, I'd be happy to connect the residents with our water resources team, and they will come out and do specific testing of the water at that particular residence and make sure that everything's safe.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. So I have a few things. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I was very sad to miss Juneteenth. I heard wonderful things about it. I was in Tampa for the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and the whole entire week just blew my mind. Session after session was applicable and interesting, and I have pages upon pages of notes. I'm not going to get into that. I'm just going to give you some highlights. There was a lot of discussion in a full session around cybersecurity and things that we need to be doing and considering. And there's some concern with the reductions at the federal level with staffing and funding. And so it is a significant threat, especially to smaller cities. And so we can talk through that. There was an amazing session with Canadian mayors and US mayors, especially right at the border, about the impacts of tariffs on the economy and the products. And those mayors spoke very eloquently about, using specific details that I think, even admitting that media can feel sensationalized. They were like, I think the quote was, everybody can have their own opinion, but you can't have your own facts. And so they went through and gave very specific examples, especially with the auto industry, on how often cars are going back and forth between Michigan specifically and Canada. So the impact on businesses, I actually would like us to have a conversation about that at some point. There was information in an art session about the National Endowment for the Arts and funding cuts there, which, obviously speaks to my heart. There was a safety session specifically for elected officials and things that we should be doing. I would say that our team in North Glen is amazing, and they've trained us well, and they take care of us quite well. But I think there's always good reminders there on how to keep ourselves safe. And there were some very passionate and heartwarming statements from some Minnesota mayors that were fairly heartbroken. I'm part of the Mayor's Alliance to End Childhood Hunger, so I went to that session as well. And I have some information about a grant program, the Mayor's Action Fund, and so some things that we might be able to do there. There was a presentation about the 2028 Summer Games. That does take at least 3 years to plan. The whole entire presentation sort of blew my mind, but it will be in LA, but a good portion of it will also be in Oklahoma City, which I did not know. And the torch will go through all 50 states. And so we might be able to see that as it passes through. Let's see. Oh, my new bestie is LaToya Cantrell. She's the mayor of New Orleans. She's fabulous. I had a lot of fun talking to her. She's very passionate. I did run into our former mayor, Michael Hancock from Denver, and he sends his wishes, but also so impressed about our Juneteenth celebration. I mean, he did a double take and was like, wait, what? North Glen? What? I was like, yeah. And he was like, tell me more. He wanted to hear all about it. And he was very excited. So there was a lot of information, but a huge celebration is we were honored. And look at this fun award. Isn't it pretty? So it is the Mayor's Climate Protection Award. And so it has my name on it, but we know that it's a whole city and the whole city staff and everyone. And I was hoping to, I'd like to connect and take a photo with Mara, our sustainability coordinator, because she did all the work to write the application. And we were awarded. It is an honorable mention, but I will tell you, it was still a very big award at the event. There was the winners actually weren't even present. So those of us that had honorable mention were in the crowd, and it was great. City of Lakewood, shout out to our neighbor, not Lakewood, Littleton, also received an award. So that was fun. 2 Colorado small cities were honored. So that was really exciting. But again, so much information about, the work that we do. I think sometimes we get lost perhaps in the fun events that we have, right? We have Pride events and Juneteenth events, and we have activities in the park. And I just did a Mayor's Monthly Minute about all the free activities that we have in the summer. And community is at the heart of what we do here. And we love to celebrate and we love to be together, but we're also doing incredible work behind the scenes to keep up our city services and making sure that our residents have everything we need. And so that is, again, a shout out to our incredible staff. They're doing such good work. So it was a few days very well spent, but I was sad to miss a few things back at home. And I am very, very, very much looking forward to July 4th, speaking of fun events, because it's a big day around here. We celebrate for the full day, and we have fireworks, and it's a good time. So that is next up. But before that, many of us are heading up the hill to go to the Colorado Municipal League annual meeting / conference, and that is another opportunity for us to dig in and learn and work with our colleagues. I believe the North Glen team, the North Glen Council, is very good at regional partnerships and working together, and this is another opportunity. So for those of you that are going, I will see you there, and we will do some learning together. All right. City Clerk Small.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have one quick item. I wanted to let everybody know that information is currently available in the City Clerk's office and online for anybody who is interested in running for City Council this November. It includes information about City Council, also an overview of what folks can expect during the election process. So I would encourage anybody who is the least bit curious about running for City Council to either stop by the City Clerk's office, we can provide information, or access the information online at northglen.org/election. Thank you.
Thank you. City Manager Guyer.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple items for council and the public this evening. We are holding a swearing-in ceremony. Chief May is on Wednesday evening at 6 p.m. We will welcome 3 new lateral police officers and have 7 recruits sworn in that evening. So the community is welcome to join us in the community room at the Justice Center. I do apologize that we couldn't work it out timing-wise with the volunteer dinner. The volunteer dinner is Thursday, so there is a conflict with the CML conference. However, we will have that dinner at 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. at E.B. Raines Junior Memorial Park in the Blue Spruce and Ponderosa pavilions, and we'll make sure that we try to avoid that conflict next year as well. And I believe when I stepped out, I think I heard Councilmember Kondo mention the Bike to Work Day with Smart eHub event on Wednesday morning. We do have a couple of county commissioners attending that ribbon cutting at 8 a.m. So for any of the council members who are not attending CML, if you can squeeze this event into your schedules, that would be great. And just reach out to Marisa Phillips to let her know you can attend. And that's all I have this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. City Attorney Hoffman.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. Other than I will see you up in Breckenridge, I have nothing to report tonight.
Thank you. Councilmember Kondo, I did see your hand earlier. Did you have more to add?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. I'm just kind of curious, you talked about the funding at risk for NEA. I was wondering if there were any sessions where they discussed about funding at risk for CPB, Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Yes. I'd have to go to my notes.
And we could take this offline.
Yeah, I can. Well, I plan on sending some sort of summary email to council, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, but yes, that was a part of it. Okay. All right, moving on. Consent agenda, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Please open the vote.
The vote is open.
Please vote.
I will close that vote, and the consent agenda passes unanimously.
Okay, we have a public hearing tonight. This is on Karl's Farm, filing number 1, amendment number 6, subdivision final plat. So I'm going to read a lengthy statement before we begin. I will now open the public hearing on Karl's Farm, filing number 1, amendment number 6, subdivision final plat for the property located on the north side of 120th Avenue between Irma Drive and Race Street in the city of North Glen. Described as a replat of Lot 1, Karl's Farm, filing number 1, amendment number 5. The North Glen City Council has jurisdiction to conduct this hearing under the applicable provisions of its Home Rule Charter and Chapters 3 and 11 of the North Glen Municipal Code. The procedure to be followed in this case will be as follows. City staff will give a brief outline of the nature of the application. The applicant may then present any evidence in support of the application. All persons opposed to the application shall then be entitled to present evidence. Any other interested person shall be entitled to present public comment or evidence. The applicant may then present any rebuttal evidence. Council members may ask questions of staff, the applicant, and the public who testify. All witnesses will be placed under oath by the city clerk and may be cross-examined by any party, counsel for any party, or the members of the city council. Are there any objections to the jurisdiction of the city council or to the form or substance of these proceedings? Hearing none, staff may give a brief outline. Director of Planning and Development, Brooks Svoboda, will present staff's analysis of the application to council. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So if not for the fact that we had public infrastructure associated with this project, this typically would not be coming before council. This would be handled administratively. So we'll dive into that in just a moment, but just wanted to give that pretext in terms of what we're here to consider tonight. Is a plat and a subdivision improvement agreement. This will be considered under Resolution CR 62. And I'll walk through the details of that also as we go through this presentation. The applicant is CNC Devco LLC. They're currently under contract to purchase 2 of the proposed lots under the subdivision. The little star up here on the right, and I will point out that the laser does not work on these screens, so I won't be able to do little circles with my magic laser here. But the red star up the top, this is the Karl's Farm Developments, the commercial pad site area. This is, just jumped forward. This is an enhanced area of the overall plat, and as you can tell, it covers most of the 8-acre parcel that we know as the commercial pad site at Karl's Farm. There we go. This is just the basic site data that we have here. It's approximately 5.125 acres. It's currently an undeveloped area, and it's effectively off of 120th between Irma and Race. Notification followed all public hearing processes for tonight. Background on this, on June 17th, last week, the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the final plat for council's consideration to divide this into 3 additional lots. As I said earlier, it's 5.125 acres. There is public infrastructure associated, which we'll cover in a moment. It has approximately $90,000 in public improvements. It's relative to the extension of a water and a sewer main in order to accommodate the pad site development. This is just an overview of the public infrastructure. What we have is essentially 148 feet of sewer line and 182 feet of water line, plus an additional fire hydrant here. This is just a rough overview of the preliminary site plan that will be considered for the 2 lots that are under consideration as part of the minor subdivision tonight. There. This is just a bigger image of the proposed plat, and once again, on the left side is where the future infrastructure is being proposed. So once again, this does not have any direct budgetary implications. The way that subdivision improvement agreements work is that the developer is responsible for installing the public infrastructure, and through this subdivision improvement agreement is a contractual document that they will not only build that public infrastructure but provide a financial security in the event that they do not follow through with the development. We can come back in and finish installation of the public infrastructure. That way it makes any potential revisiting of this project possible because the infrastructure would be in place. So for our recommendation, this is there's a set of approval criteria, which is also included in the staff report for the Planning Commission. Essentially, we have determined that it meets all approval criteria as outlined in the UDO. Staff and the Planning Commission are recommending approval of CR 62. Administratively, you have 3 options. You can approve with or without conditions, deny the request based on a set of reasons that identify or table for future consideration. We are recommending approval for council. Also just want to point out that that as part of this, the applicant has actually gotten approval as of today for all their civil package, and they will be ready to move forward with mobilization shortly hereafter. Any questions?
Councilmember Goff.
Thank you. Yeah, so mine's brief, I think. Just trying to get this square in my mind. If they're requesting to divide this into 3 plats, then are they going to develop all 3 plats?
No. They're looking at developing 2 of the lots. The first one would be for a quick serve food service. Come back to the plat here, sorry. So on the right side of this image here are the two lots that are being created. The remaining balance is the remainder lot to be created. So want to point out that the applicant is operating under the authority of the property owner and is essentially trying to get their pad site approved tonight with this application. The minor site plan amendment or minor site plan was approved administratively. It didn't require planning commission approval. Once again, this would normally not come before council if not for the fact that we had a little bit of public infrastructure that had to be extended.
So this applicant is going to develop two of the...
Correct. The initial pad site is off to the right here. It's the middle lot. Go back one. It's this area right here.
And this is to the east of the QT.
That's correct.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. That's just...
Councilmember Kondo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Director Sabota, for responding to my email in regards to coordination with North Metro Fire, especially when it comes to placement of the fire hydrant. I am kind of curious, as I recently had an experience with a leaking fire hydrant in the older part of the city. Do we specify to the developer the type of fire hydrant and all of that sort of detail?
Yeah, so part of what happens with the site development approval process is that we have a development review committee that does a review of all development plans. There's 3 stages to that typically. There's the initial submittal where we confirm that whether or not it can technically feasibly be built, and then we move through a progressive stage to where they have to provide 100% civils. So as part of this approval tonight with the SIA, they must submit 100% civils, which they just got approved today, before they can actually break ground and pull permits and grading permits. So part of what will happen is that if council approves this tonight, the Plat and the SIA, we will go through, and they have already provided us a copy of the letter of credit for this development. And what we would do is then they would go in and get their grading permits and everything else. All of that is based on city engineering standards and specs, as well as with North Metro Fire. We also look at it for transportation mitigation, water quality, stormwater, all of those types of things. So typically when we present something to you like this, we're at like the 60 to 80% civil package, but this group is very motivated and they're really trying to get going on this as quickly as possible. So, but they have met all the standards of our engineering requirements, as well as landscaping, et cetera.
Gotcha. And then one follow-up question. So you're saying the eastern side, just east of the QT, is what's going to be developed. So if there is development that goes on the subsection on the west side, will that have to require some assessment of a fire hydrant placement if in the future?
Yeah, so what would happen is that we would have to evaluate. We actually do have a pending application moving forward through the development review process. What we'd have to evaluate is the existing water infrastructure and whether there's any requirement, if they can plug into what's already there, or whether they'd be required to extend or upgrade any of the existing infrastructure. Typically what we do is we work with North Metro Fire, and they do have a fire hydrant distance requirement, which is typically 300 feet for commercial and residential areas. So what we would be looking at is just to make sure that we're still in compliance with that with any new proposed development for remaining undeveloped pad sites.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Yep.
That's all we have.
And the applicant is also here to help answer any questions that you may have. And I will hopefully get this thing to work and keep moving. I'm going slow with the button.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, everyone providing testimony on the application will be placed under oath. We will do that now as a group before the applicant makes their presentation. If you intend to provide testimony, please stand as you are able and be sworn in by the city clerk at this time. Nobody, huh? Okay. I would like to call the applicant forward to present evidence in support of this application. Great.
So if you'll raise your right hand, do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Joel Hardy with Construction Concepts, and we are the design builder for the project. And we've worked very closely with C&C DevCo to, and North Glen as well, to get this project started as quickly as possible. And we're very excited to be in the North Glen community. And that was really about it. So thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Does the council have any questions for the applicant? Doesn't look like we do.
Thank you.
Okay. And I didn't see anybody else that's here. Is there anyone on the phone who would like to provide public comment? You can unmute by pressing *6. Okay. Does council have any other questions for the applicant or staff? We're good? Just checking. Okay. Hearing none, I will close the public hearing. Moving into resolutions, CR 59. Will the clerk please read the title?
A resolution approving the expenditure from the Police Forfeiture Trust Fund in the amount of $136,400 for the purchase of a Recon 180 training system.
Excellent. Commander Justin Lauk will provide a summary of the item. Good evening.
Good evening. How are we doing this evening?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you for asking. So I cheated tonight, and I got a outside presenter as well. So I'm going to just touch on the fiscal part of this. We met with the Forfeiture Trust Fund Board back in May. They approved the use of the funds for the TI Training Recon LED system. It's an immersive training system for our police department. I'll let Todd kind of give you the broad overview of it in a little more description. But it's something that we'll use for our 84 sworn officers. It'll help us eliminate some time outside of the police department for training, which will also help budgetary-wise, kind of allocate resources budgetary-wise to the more important things, and then add on to our training with the system. One thing I do want to point out is that it is multi-use. So instead of just using it for just a training system, we can use it for things like a real-time crime center. Should we have to stand up an EOC, we can use it for that as well. And then looking into the future for drone first responder type stuff, it comes with 3 screens. And like I said, he'll explain it a little bit more, but we can pull up anything we want on all of those screens should we need to. It's a pretty great immersive system. And in our view, it's a smart investment in officer readiness and community safety. And our recommendation is that we get approval for CR 59. So without further ado, I want to introduce Todd from TI Training.
Welcome.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. My name is Todd Brown. I'm Executive Vice President and one of the founders and owners of TI Training, where we manufacture interactive simulation systems for law enforcement training. We're located in Golden. We just celebrated our 19th anniversary on June 1st. Currently, we have about 2,000 agencies across the United States that utilize our simulation systems. And they range in size from some smaller 10 and 20-man departments to NYPD and their 40,000 officers. Because if you're an officer in North Glen or New York or LA or Houston, you're essentially doing the same job. And the simulation systems are designed to put officers in situations they may encounter during their regular business or course of business and make decisions. And based on the decisions they make, that scenario can then branch down different paths so they can see the effectiveness of those decisions. And this ranges from what's typically referred to as, well, we call it critical incident training, or commonly referred to as de-escalation training, on up to active shooter training. So anything an officer may encounter during their day, we can replicate. Our simulation system includes over 1,000 scenarios on a variety of subjects, and a variety of different types of calls that an officer might encounter. With the purchase of our system, they gain a lifetime license to our software and a lifetime license to our scenario library. We have a full-time video production staff that 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, they make new scenarios that we share with all of our users all across the country. So this simulation system is not only designed for that decision-making training, but also has a marksmanship element to help them with their marksmanship training on either a pistol or a patrol rifle or any other device they might utilize. And it also has a portion of the software that is geared towards the community. So the chief on National Night Out can expose your citizens to some of the decisions they have to make in real time. And if you approve this, I encourage all of you, once it's set up, to come over to the PD and see what these guys see and how quickly these things can unfold and the decisions they have to make. I didn't see my PowerPoint come up. I don't know if I need to do so. Oh, there it is. Again, we're located in Golden, Colorado. We've expanded internationally now as well. We have everything from a single screen projected system to what we propose, which is a 3-screen LED system. And to put things in perspective, the LED screen that's currently on your wall, ours consists of 3 screens. Each one of those screens is roughly twice the size of that screen on the wall. These screens can be moved around the room, so we're constantly providing proper aspect ratios for the officers as well to gain complete and total immersion into those scenarios. There we are. So this is similar to what we've proposed, the Recon simulation system. Recon is short for reconfigurable. So they can configure it whatever's going to best serve helping them assist that officer in reaching a training objective. Whether it's a brand new officer or a 20-year in service or the tactical team officers, we've got scenarios that cover everything for that. And if they need a scenario, they can always pick up the phone and call us. We will produce it, because if your officer here in Northglenn needs that scenario, there are officers all over the country that are going to run into similar issues and problems. So we'll share that scenario with everybody. We have, again, about 2,000 agencies here. Interestingly, NYPD is not the owner of the greatest number of our systems. It's actually the TSA that owns the greatest number of our systems, and they use those in direct support of the Federal Flight Deck Officer Program or the Armed Pilot Program around the nation. So this is the latest and greatest in technology that we've been able to produce for law enforcement training. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this point.
Councilmember Kondo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for presenting. I have a couple questions. So obviously you have the technology, but clearly there is a software component. So I'm just curious as to whether there is going to be some ongoing software updates and those sort of things that would be ongoing life cycle costs to maintain this system and to keep it up to date.
That's a really good question. So every computer has a shelf life. We have some of our systems that we built back in 2006 running on Windows XP that are still running for those agencies. They haven't been able to afford to upgrade or anything like that. And what we do to make sure that no agency is left behind is if an agency does upgrade their system, we hold those older parts so we can support the other customers out in the field. I mentioned that one of the things you purchase is a lifetime license to our software, which also includes lifetime software updates. So when all of our programmers are in-house, when they detect a bug, those software updates are distributed free of charge along with scenarios for the life of the system, which again, with normal maintenance, can last as much as 19 years like some of them out there have today.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. And then a follow-up question. Emergency planning is kind of an area that I dabbled in when I was in the Navy as a civil servant. I'm just really curious about your configuration for an emergency operations center. Do you have a graphic, or can you just kind of thumbnail briefly how that's going to look and feel?
Yes, sir. I don't think there's one in this particular PowerPoint, but if you look at this LED screen, so our system, again, consists of 3 very large LED screens. The screen has a video processor. That video processor can accept any video input. That means the city IT people can send them the video feeds from any camera anywhere in the city, and it can be displayed on those LED walls in real time. So when they're not using the system for objective-based training with their officers, it can be another emergency operations center with live video piped right to those screens.
System include also the tables and workstations for different groups, say for example, operations, logistics, public information, et cetera, or it's basically you're just providing only the large screen component to that?
We're the large screen component to that. Our system comes with a computer that operates our simulation system. It's just the LED video processor can accept another video input from an external source.
Okay, gotcha. So it's not the entire EOC
No, sir.
infrastructure?
No, sir.
Okay.
It's primarily a decision-making simulation system for law enforcement training. It just has the ability to accept another video feed and act as an EOC, another EOC.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Nowicki?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for being here, sir. This is certainly interesting technology. So a few questions here. Which training goals are best served by this system versus where like physical drills might be essential?
So our system projects live video that the officers interact with. We can then outfit their pistol, their taser, their OC with infrared lasers. So if they decide to deploy those in that scenario and deploy them correctly, they see the results. The video would branch to the results of that level of force, for example. So in other words, there's always a kinesthetic component to this that also allows officers for realistic movement within the simulated environment. So when I started in law enforcement training, what feels like 100 years ago, they were called firearms training systems. And that evolved into a nomenclature that was called use of force simulation systems. But what they really are is a decision-making simulator. So from the first encounter with that on-screen person, the officer can interact with that actor on screen in real time and make decisions as the scenario develops. Again, everything from a traffic stop. We even have have produced specific scenarios for things like dealing with people with autism. Well, how do I change my communication style in order to deal with that person? And that's ongoing. We're working with Denver Health now to develop some more of those things. And when we're not doing interactive simulations, there's other skill building components. So for example, one of the softwares on the system is allowing officers to practice putting tourniquets on themselves and on others in real time with everything going on around them. So there's a bunch of different applications we can utilize the simulation system for.
Okay. A couple other questions,
Yes,
and
sir.
this might be for MPD and kind of at large here. Is there a plan to kind of monitor outcomes such as kind of reductions in use of force incidents or improvements in de-escalation rates? Just to kind of know if this is...
Yeah, it's hard to place it specifically with the training that's provided because we already provide all of that training, right? This is, we do monitor that as it is. We can audit all of that in our RMS system right now. However, I think once we implement the training more specific to, like you mentioned, persons with disabilities, something like that, to where it's very, very realistic. The training on these simulators is very realistic. I think that's something we can definitely monitor.
Okay. And lastly, how does this fit kind of in maybe kind of going off of some of what you just said, how does this fit into kind of like a holistic training model that might include like bias training, de-escalations, maybe use of tools, skills, other things like that?
Yeah, I mean, the complete interactivity of this is pretty outstanding, and obviously I invite you guys to come and see it. We've actually used the TI simulation training before. We get it about 1 or 2 weeks a year through the greater metro training area. As far as the scenarios, the best part about this is we are unlimited. We can build scenarios for pretty much anything. The company is outstanding. They've made that pledge to us that if there's something we do want to see in that realm, or we do want to train our officers on because we are seeing it more in our world, then we can direct training specific to that, and they can they can make simulations, make the training scenarios to fit our needs in that area.
All right, thank you.
If I can expand a bit
Yeah.
on your previous question.
Sure.
We actually worked with Metro DC Police Department, where they did an extensive study on simulation training and how it would affect their officers going forward. We're waiting on them to publish their findings, but we actually produced 100 specific scenarios for them so they could test certain criteria from everything from de-escalation training on up to, again, active shooter training, and what impact that had on their force. And as soon as they publish that, of course, it'll be public and we'll share it with everybody.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Burns?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you so much for being here. I recognize you from your videos on your website, your demonstration videos.
I had less gray hair then, but thank you.
I think my question is more for our police staff. So I saw this is going into the community room.
Correct.
So how are we dealing with loss of that space? How is this really serving the community? Would love to hear more details on that.
Yeah, so we've been working with the installers at TI Training. They're very great at configurable whatever we need. So it's pretty incredible how small they can make this as in surface space. Initially, I think it sat out about 4 feet from the wall, so we would diminish about 4 feet of the front of the room. For those of you that have been in our training room, there's a big screen right in the middle. That whole wall is going to be screens now. But they have found a way to attach the middle screen to the wall and shorten the length of the legs to diminish some of that space that we're going to lose. So it is less than initially we thought, but it's going to diminish, or it's going to take away some space in the room. No doubt about it. But we've gone through the measurements, we've looked at it. It won't affect the room as far as training, and personnel will be able to put it in there.
Okay, cool. So then the second part of my question, though, is you did mention in the memo that how this will also benefit the community since we're putting it in the community room. So can you just expand upon that?
Yeah, sure. So we use our TI system, or the TI system that we borrow right now in our Citizens Police Academy. That's typically the week that we get it. The community gets to, the attendees of the Citizens Police Academy get to come in and get to experience the simulator and the scenarios that are built into that system. So that's our main touch with the community. Obviously, it's more for the police department use, but we can, obviously show people and have them experience that as well.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And I'll be sure to, I think we should connect with CCPP as well.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you.
So, okay, I was thinking this is the same equipment that we sort of borrow on occasion. How often have we been borrowing it in the past?
Yeah, so it's a regional asset, so we can apply to borrow or put ourselves on the calendar and borrow it. Typically, it's about 1 to 2 weeks out of the year. And during that time, it gets a lot of use in our department. So we have sergeants going in on their shifts and bringing their guys in there and using the scenarios that are built into the system as a training factor while we have it in the police department.
Okay. So knowing that we only used it 1 to 2 weeks out of the year, what are you anticipating having your own that increasing?
100-fold. It's going to increase incredibly. So we have in-house instructors on it already. Our plan is to build more in-house instructors as well. Our sergeants will be trained on it. So on same shift days, they can bring their officers in there and use it and utilize the training system. And then our in-house instructors will be able to use it at any point. Our plan is to use it a lot. Sure.
Chief May has thoughts.
You got me up here.
Yeah.
Actually, one of the things that I really want to stress, especially when I looked at this system, right? So we get it a couple times a year where the officers train on it. Just like some of the defensive tactics room, this system will also be integrated in that as well. And what it does, it gives us an opportunity to do a lot of repetition, right? And that repetition where we put officers in these scenarios, sometimes scary scenarios, and they go through that repetition and they become better at making, their decision-making model. We let them fail in these scenarios, right, inside there where we can coach, mentor them to make good decisions in there. But the more time you have on that, the better they become. So we've done a great job, and with your help getting the 5 overhires and everything else in there. We have a lot of young people But now, you know, this is where the rubber meets the road, where we have to train them, get them up to that, you know, that ability in there. And so that reduces the liability. The more training they do, the more de-escalation training they do, the better they'll be out there on the street in the really live environment, right? So this is why, and we talked about that because it is a good cost, right? But we used the forfeiture funds that we had, and we were like, hey, you know, this would be nice to have, right? And you know, and this is what we can do with it. So that's why we went to the forfeiture, you know, committee, get their approval, and then we're coming to you guys tonight to show you and talk to you about the benefit of what this does. And I do, you know, and I think some of you probably have gone through a TI training, you know, that we had on the other stuff. This is just going to be, you know, again, with the screens and everything else, it's going to feel like you're right there in that scenario.
So I had the opportunity to experience it. It's intense, and I 100% see the value in the product. I think I'm concerned about the placement, because when I think about not only all the other uses of that room, and that's not where it was when I used it, and so I'm trying to picture the space, and it doesn't seem, it doesn't, it's a concern for me. It feels weird. It feels like that's not the best place.
And I'll be honest, that was a concern for me too. So they took me down, you know, to the facility, and my thing was sticking out 4 feet. I didn't want to lose 4 feet in that room. So it's about 2.5 feet that we'll lose off the wall. So the boards that are up there, the whiteboards that we use, we're put those on, you know, that'll fit on the other side. So we're utilizing that. So we're only losing the, you know, 80-inch TV that we're repurposing in another part of it, you know, in the police department. So it will look, so you'll see that, you know, when you look at it, there's going to be, instead of the TV and the whiteboards, it's going to be 3 screens. Our patches and everything else will be up in those areas too. So, but we will lose a couple feet. We'll have to adjust the tables back a little bit, but it will, you know, it will accommodate the same amount of people as we currently have.
And so fitting the space is one thing. I think that's not really my concern. My concern is putting it in a used space. That is a space that you put a ton of events in.
Yeah.
And it's not an empty room. So my question, as far as how often you're going to use it, I would love to know that you're going to do it, you know, the first and third Fridays or whatever. Like, it's going to be on a schedule. It's not going to be as needed or when we feel like it or when we can. Like, I would love to know, if you're spending this kind of money on this amazing tool, that you have people in there on a rotation that's scheduled. Is that planned, or have you not thought through that yet?
It is planned. So when, obviously with the new recruits and everything coming through the academy and going to our in-house academy, it's going to be very well used in our in-house academy. On top of that, we do in-service training. I don't have the schedule on me, but we do in-service training just for our regular officers as well. The supplemental is really that as needed or as you can get in there, but there is definitely going to be scheduled trainings in there, absolutely.
Okay.
And as far as the space goes, you know, we use that room for a lot of presentations, a lot of trainings, outside trainings. We host trainings. That expands all that for us. So instead of using the TV, which it's a big TV, don't get me wrong, that's in there right now, they have an entire presentation platform now. To where if a presenter comes in from outside and we're giving a training or hosting a training for the metro area for police officers, the presentation is a lot better on a bigger screen right in front of them.
Right. Well, I'm just knowing the calendar of that space. It's full. And so I want you to be able to use it to its capacity, right? Like, as often as you can. So you may have to be pushing other things out, or I don't know.
Well, the beauty of law enforcement is we work 24 hours a day, so a lot of times we can push our trainings outside of normal business hours.
That is true. That is true. That's a good idea. Okay. Well, I personally think it's a wonderful product. Experiencing it myself was very interesting. I'm not a good shot, I will tell you that right now. I failed all the simulations it was terrible. But it was a really good experience, and so I do hope that you make it available to council, and everyone should get in there and give it a go.
Absolutely.
Because the versatility of it it's incredible. So well done.
Exactly why we make it, though, so we can practice.
Yeah.
Right? And if you make a mistake, you can do the scenario over again.
Well, just hearing about it, like when I was given the description, I was like, yeah, it's probably like an elevated video game. Oh, no. No. That's real stuff. So it's very good technology. So thank you for.
Thank you, and you're all
Getting
invited to our, come stop by our facility at any time. We're in the Coors Technical Park, so you're welcome anytime to come in and see everything we do.
Looks like we had a couple more questions after me. Councilmember Roper.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not a question, just a comment. This sounds amazing, and really this seems like an investment that our police department needs, and we want to keep you guys first class and keep you with all the proper training, and thank you for all you do. So I think it's important that we invest in this.
Thank you.
Councilmember Nowicki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple more questions here. Would this possibly benefit other kind of surrounding cities or municipalities?
Yeah, just like anything else, you know, if it will not be a regional asset, this will belong to the city of North Glen. However, if they do show interest, which if we get this system, we will be the state of the art in the North Metro area. It is the best training system out right now.
Can we charge for that, for them to use it?
I'm the wrong person to ask.
Chief?
I'm sure we could, but yes, we can host other trainings for outside agencies as well.
Okay. I'd like to hear, I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Todd.
Todd.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to hear, because, again, this is an incredible piece of technology. I guess I'm a little bothered by a lot of the scenarios seem like it's shooting and like de-escalating with weapons drawn, and I get that's an aspect. But I'd like to hear kind of, and you mentioned some of the scenarios, but you know, talk to me a little bit about kind of the breadth of scenarios so that it's not just shooting at a screen.
Right, and again, 100 years ago, that's where it started.
Right.
But training has evolved. And so there's almost every single scenario on the system has a way to, quote, win, unquote, the scenario, meaning there's a way to de-escalate or talk your way out of it. Sometimes, despite an officer's best efforts, everything takes a left-hand turn anyway. So the instructor controls much of that branching so they can drive the officer to a specific objective. So out of those 1,000 scenarios, almost every single one of them has a way to get out of it without anything happening. Again, it's really then evaluating the officer's decision about what did they do, what's likely to occur next. Or we can make everything take a left-hand turn on them even though they did everything perfectly. So the idea is to present a scenario that is realistic in the way that it flows, and that it flows based on the interactions of that officer. And the only exception to that would really be the active shooter scenarios. Other than that, whether it's a traffic stop scenario, dealing with an emotionally disturbed person scenario, a burglary or a theft scenario, you typically will start the scenario with the officer greeting on screen the reporting party, interviewing that reporting party, gaining relevant information, and then go on to conduct their investigation, just like they do in the real world.
Okay.
And that's our goal.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Don't see any other questions. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please open the vote.
Madam Mayor, we need a motion to approve CR 59.
Oh, I thought we had that. Sorry, we missed that part. Apologies. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
All right, please open the vote.
The vote is open.
Please vote.
I will close that vote, and CR 59 passes unanimously.
Thank you, City Clerk Small, for keeping us on track. Okay, CR 62, will the clerk please read the title?
A resolution approving the Karl's Farm Filing Number 1, Amendment Number 6, Subdivision Final Plat and Subdivision Improvement Agreement.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Seconded.
All right, our Director of Planning and Development, Brooks Svoboda, is here again to provide a summary. Quick one.
This is just a follow through the public hearing, so if there are any other additional questions, happy to answer them at this time.
I don't think we have any. We had an opportunity previously, so thank you so much. Please open the vote.
The vote is open.
Please vote.
I will close that vote, and CR 62 passes unanimously.
All right, discussion item, Civic Center Visioning Phase 3, Work Session Number 3. All right, our Directing of Planning and Development is back at the podium to introduce this item.
Just enough time to grab my paper. Okay. Mark Delatorre from MIG and Matt Prosser from EPS will be here giving the presentation tonight. A couple things I just want to tee up that we'll cover in this conversation is that really what we're trying to do with this effort are a couple of things. We want to make sure that we're memorializing council's expectations and their vision while we keep this grounded based on fiscal and infrastructure issues. But I also want to mention that really the idea here is that we have a blueprint of what we can do moving forward with engaging a developer as well as also the community. So I want to emphasize that while we've come up with two scenarios, it's not necessarily likely what we would ultimately end up seeing. Moreover, is that this is a reference point for you when we engage the community as well as future developers, that we have a good understanding of what we are being presented as an alternative to these ideas and a measure against that so that we can ensure that we're meeting your expectation. So I just want to hit that little pretext to our conversation tonight, and then I'm going to head this over to to Mark, and then Mark and Matt will jump through, and if there's anything I can help supplement with, then please feel free to ask. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Matt
Welcome.
and Mark were practically the same. We just flip back and forth. There's the candy, not the professional rap artist. Thank you. It's great to see y'all again. Really excited to be back. As Brooke noted, we've been moving along based on initial direction, our extended conversations with a number of city leaders, and we're really excited about where we're at because, as Brooke noted, we've set up the technical sideboards, right, to the process to make sure that what does move forward is grounded in reality, both from an economic and market standpoint, as well as site infrastructure and otherwise. A couple major categories we're going to touch on tonight. Again, a reminder and just underscoring of the purpose of this study as an evolution from the original master plan and other planning efforts that have considered this site. Quick background recap of how we got to where we're at. A review of the preferred development scenarios. Matt's going to get into a little more detail around the feasibility and the financial tools to achieve one of these development outcomes. We have a couple of specific questions for y'all, and then we can discuss next steps after that. So to start us off, pardon me, the purpose of the study, as a reminder, some of this is what Brooke was saying, just want to underscore it and put words on the screen to it. We want to make sure that where we're going is reflecting your vision and goals for the role of this kind of civic area in the community. We want to make sure that that vision has been informed by fiscal, financial, and infrastructural realities, which is a big point of this, to make sure that what goes forward, what conversations are to be had with the community and private developers are grounded in that reality. And importantly, in those conversations, this document, this plan, this vision is a communication tool. We want to make sure that when we have those conversations, we've set up the appropriate sideboards to eventually get to a built product that reflects, again, y'all's vision. And getting there, allowing for the flexibility that's necessary to happen as tomorrow the market changes and so forth. Quick background recap. Again, this is just this process so far. Started in late 2024, updating the analyses. We had a touch point with y'all, got into the initial market conditions and infrastructural considerations. Came back earlier in 2025 as we were developing the scenarios, got to 3 potential avenues. Again, none of them being what we were hoping for in the end, but having different unique aspects so that we could synthesize the preferred elements. We touched base with y'all, with the Planning Commission. Now we're back in front of y'all as we've gone through a refinement of those scenarios and retained 2 scenarios, which is, I think, perhaps different or a departure from what you may have anticipated, knowing that there are kind of 2 major elements, and we'll get into that when we talk about the scenarios themselves, that we want to make sure that we confirm and verify with y'all. Talk through city leadership, fire department, public works to really get into the details of what those scenarios are. And then up until today, really been getting into the weeds of what the gaps are as we look at financial feasibility, costs, and tools to deliver on that vision. As we set out early in this process, a couple years back, 2017, there were 6 major goals. We'll come back and note how we are addressing these specifically as we moved into this stage, but at a high level, the community's identity, public gathering spaces, a mix of land uses, leveraging adjacent developments, connectivity, and the location of municipal facilities, which at the time this building did not exist, but was important parts of the goal setting from the 2017 master plan. As we noted, a lot has been accomplished since then. The new rec center, senior center and theater is up online. City Hall is where we're at today. And we've gone through a number of different iterations in looking at the site and conversations with both the private development community as well as internal analyses based on concerns actually residents had brought forth regarding parking and access to some of the assets that the city had invested in. So as we update that vision, we look back to those guiding principles or those initial considerations, and we think about a stronger community or a strong community identity. And from what we're hearing from y'all in our process, it's a modern space that's also timeless. When we think about gathering spaces, it's really this notion of third places. When we think about a mix of land uses, we're activating commercial through residential density if and where appropriate. We've already noted that the municipal facilities have been located, designed, and built. And connectivity, importantly, is really about a vision for more walkability, both within the site and connecting to some of our other resources like EB Rains. The site itself, quick breakdown as a reminder, should not be new to y'all, but as you know, it's publicly owned. There's an initial mainline infrastructure upgrades that have already been completed as part of some of the early implementation. Some of the major facilities identified in those early master plans have been built, and there are adjacencies to a number of amenities and regional access through I-25. Those are the positives. The negatives, or perhaps the not so positives, when we think about constraints that the site has to offer, is limited access with internal site visibility, right? Where, though adjacent to I-25, it's a little circuitous to get down to the site itself. There's an environmental covenant from the old rec center's remediation. Not really an issue as it relates to attracting developers, but a point of note in that process. And a number of density limitations. The final program that we'll discuss tonight and the range within that is far less dense than what had been conceived in the 2017 master plan. And that's due to a number of constraints that through further digging and further digging and further digging, both figuratively and literally, we've been able to unearth in this process. Matt, I'm gonna keep going. I'm putting on my economist hat real quick. I'm now Matt again. The last time we were in front of y'all, really the first three questions what we are focused on tonight. When Matt digs in later into some of the nitty-gritty of the numbers, we'll really be focused on those second questions there about the feasibility of the revised master plan, the tools that can be leveraged, and what elements are most essential in attracting those development partners. The placemaking elements that, again, thinking of this as a third place and the role that the Civic area has for the larger North King community, some of the questions that were put forth and that we really kind of dove into in this process were thinking about how new development interacted with the parkway, with EB Rains, the existing facilities, thinking about how the outdoor and indoor gathering spaces really could serve as those third places. Thinking about the experience of those who live there, right? If you're going to be introducing residents to a civic area, what is that look and feel and character of being in that place? And when we think about the prioritization of connectivity, making sure there's a balance of vehicular access as well as safety and comfort for those who might be patronizing business or crossing to EB Rains. And importantly, and one of the starts to this whole kind of update was around parking itself, the impact to the site and the pedestrian experience, both in quantity and quality. I'm digging into feasibility a little bit.
Yeah.
Matt? Okay, Mark again.
Hi, everyone. Matt Prosser with EPS. Great to be with you. So a lot of the work that EPS has been doing to support MIG in the city in the second phase is looking at the feasibility of the different uses that were identified in the scenarios. And so just giving a quick overview of sort of those feasibility constraints or opportunities that we found in the plan. So really from a residential perspective, as we mentioned last time, in terms of market demand, this is the highest and best use, if you will, for the site. Also the most financially feasible. We found both testing of apartments as well as for sale townhomes, found projects that were likely attractive to developers to build on this site. And so what we've been envisioning from sort of a scale and type of housing is likely something we can attract a developer to come with. The biggest challenge is, as we've mentioned before, more about the capacity constraints in terms of infrastructure. But I will note, and I'll say this again later on, that there will be a desire from a prospective developer to try to maximize the number of residential units they can get on the site within sort of the design constraints that that are present. And so that is something to keep in mind. Next slide. In terms of commercial and retail, you know, as you all have noted in your comments, as well as from our experience, you know, this is really a key component of the placemaking aspect of the project. And so a couple of considerations. You know, overall, retail use generally seems to be feasible. I think there's two things to really consider. It's most likely that access and visibility on Civic Center Drive is the most important element to prospective retailers on the site, whereas potentially the location of retail and food and beverage on Memorial Parkway is perhaps better from a placemaking perspective. But as we get more embedded in the site, closer to the rec center, it may be more challenging to get retailers wanting to locate there or pay rents to support new development. So there's a little bit of that trade-off of what location on the site is most attractive to the business versus what we think is best in terms of trying to spur a sense of place and activity. And so you'll see some of that trade-off in the analysis. We also looked at live-work units. This is the one use that was really not feasible from our modeling perspective. A lot of times the use of this live-work component is to support that placemaking and providing a unique sort of alternative to a traditional retail space to create more activity. And so it would be sort of a loss leader if a developer were to include it. And that's something, if we want that type of use, we might need to figure out how to support the project financially.
It's a loss leader too, not a lost. Meandering.
Loss leader. No, yes.
Typo, ignore that.
We also found some code challenges around parking requirements that you all have for live work that challenge sort of site design as well. And so there need to be some considerations for design flexibility if that's a use that's really desired by council. Yep.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, that last part there on the regulatory standpoint, the 6.5 per unit is notably higher, I think, than a lot of the best practices we're able to. So a consideration if that's something we wanted to use to drive character. Into the actual preferred scenarios themselves, I wanted to talk through the approach to that as a starting point. As a publicly owned site, we wanted to think through this development as part of a larger partnership in order to achieve some of the goals that have been established in the process. These scenarios really, again, and this is going back to some of our earlier points about the role of this, are a tool really for capturing the key elements that we've identified from a use standpoint, from a character standpoint, to make sure that the urban form's reflecting kind of what that vision initially put forth was. We're going to have, just by way of orientation, site plan, land use and parking takeoffs, the implications from an infrastructural standpoint, and the financial feasibility analysis. And each slide for the scenario will follow that sequence, so we can step through those and answer questions around that. And again, these are a reflection of what we heard not just from y'all, but from NURA, from Planning Commission, through detailed analysis and pulling forward not just what we've learned in this process, but what we've learned through the iterations of this overall civic area planning. And ultimately, in the end, what is going to be presented is not what's going to be built, but really putting together something that it has the level of feasibility and flexibility to allow for the accommodations and engaging with the private developer. As Matt noted, there's two major distinctions to the concepts, and I'll step through both of them, but as a way of framing it, one of them is really focused on the central gathering kind of placemaking orientation with the commercial concentration around Memorial Parkway, while the other is really focused on more so of a residential core that has more of a baseline feasibility to the location of commercial. So placemaking, active commercial node, residential core as the big points of distinction. So if you look to this first scenario here, you can see that commercial and live work core really focused along Memorial Parkway to the north where the density has been located. You see the multifamily in orange and townhome products kind of moving along Community Center Drive. There's new connections to Webster Lake Promenade that are suggested here, and there's an additional 60 parking spaces reserved for the senior center immediately proximate to the south and the larger lot behind or below the red. You can see the square footages and floors and residential and unit counts associated with development products, also under that cap that we'd established through the infrastructural analysis. Just by orientation of scale, how that's kind of feeling and fitting onto the site, given the other scales and densities and the adjoining properties with the hotels to the north and the apartments to the south.
Yes, so we test the feasibility of that plan first. There's obviously infrastructure feasibility. So in terms of sanitary sewer, it utilizes about 56% of the available capacity, so fits within ours. In terms of water supply, it utilizes almost all of the available water supply. And so sort of maximizing the density from that perspective. We analyzed its financial feasibility and found that it does have a financial gap of about $4 million. And that's largely attributed to, I think, the live work use in that plan that is harder to overcome, sort of the loss leader, if you will, of that use. And so there is a challenge. If that exact program is what we're trying to attract, there's likely that a developer is going to cite a gap. And we can talk about how we might address that if we really want this vision going forward. There's some different measures we use related to return that were our indicators that are listed on the site here. And the project didn't hit those sort of thresholds, just so sort of an indicator of how we measured success for the project.
So into the second scenario now, you see there's no live work in this particular one. Like the prior concept, I'm going to that last bullet there, overparked, again, in the program to accommodate proximity to the rest center. So 60 additional spaces in the last concept, 132 additional spaces in this concept. Commercial buildings, you can see now, are located along Community Center Drive, more viable location, a desirable location from a retailer standpoint, but we lose a little bit of that activity in the core that the prior concept was putting forth. The multifamily has a different configuration, though still located on the north end of the property, with the townhome product moving into really that central core. Space adjacent to some kind of internal connectivity and an open space spine that connects both the northern property down to Memorial Parkway. Again, just for orientation and seeing how the massing is really fitting into the context of the area.
Yeah, so this scenario from the infrastructure capacity standpoint doesn't quite maximize the availability on the site, and so fits within those constraints. And then we found this was a feasible project. This is, if I were to sort of kind of design a project that a developer would come forward to try to meet your goals and aspirations, I would assume it would look like this. And based on our analysis, it looks like it would produce an attractive project for a potential partner. And so what we'll want to do through the rest of these slides in our discussion is talk about what those elements are really important to you all and how do we sort of address how we can provide those with the tools and levers you all have within soliciting a developer. So comparison here, just the two on the same slide. So scenario one, again, being more of that commercial public core focus on Memorial Parkway. Fits within the infrastructure capacity. There is a feasibility gap, and we have about 60 extra parking spaces. Scenario two, a little more residential village focused with the commercial out on the edge on Civic Center Drive. Slightly less density, therefore less infrastructure capacity being utilized, and a little more parking, or actually I would say double the amount of extra parking that's provided. And so sort of understanding that trade-off there. And so as we saw sort of, looking at the implications of feasibility, there's some things that we wanted to kind of share with you in terms of what we think the private sector developer will think of the site. And so first is, I would think from a developer's perspective, they're going to want to maximize the number of units, as I mentioned earlier, on the site, fitting in with those infrastructure capacities and also parking and site design constraints. And so they'll look to try to maximize. And so giving guidance on where and how we'd like density to fit with on the site is something that I feel is a parameter we need to provide within any sort of solicitation. There'll be likely limited or less interest to do a sizable retail commercial product, especially more embedded on Memorial Parkway. And so if we really feel like getting off of Civic Center Drive and really driving that retail core is something that's essential, then we need to think about what potential financial implications there are there and how we might want to help support a project financially to get that income, that outcome that we're desired. In terms of the infrastructure layouts that we looked at in the two scenarios, there are small differences in cost, but nothing that's sizable enough to say one street design pattern is better than the other. And so it's more just sort of the mixtures of uses and where we locate them are really driving feasibility. So as we mentioned, there is a gap for the first scenario of about 4 million, whereas the second scenario sort of hit our target markets, our metrics. There are some tools that we can consider to help support a project by paying for a portion of or all of some public improvements that are desired on the site. And so we've outlined a number of these, sort of starting with the ones at the top that are probably the easiest for you all to provide or consider, down to the more challenging. And so first is you own the land. Seeking a partnership, we sort of assumed you would sell it for fair market value, which is about $3 million based on our comparable research. And so if we're wanting certain uses that may not be as financially viable, discounting the price of the land as part of the development agreement might be a way to overcome some of those gaps. The next is a developer might want to use a Title 32 Metropolitan District to help fund infrastructure improvements on the site. That's common in a lot of sort of the recent developments in Northglenn in the trade area, including Karl's Farm that has a Metro District. And that has potential to provide almost $4 million in sort of the most optimistic scenario for potential funding. And so, as you can see, these tools start to really address that gap of that second program if we're really desiring that. You could also consider the use of tax increment funds through the urban renewal. That amount that could be shared just kind of depends on some additional analysis that would need to be done by NERA. We could also consider sharing some of the sales tax that's generated by the commercial uses that we do attract to the site. That has some potential to support the project, up to $1 million, but may not be the most fruitful tool or easy tool to sort of use. And then you can also consider using capital improvement dollars to support infrastructure investment. There's about $6.5 million in public right-of-way costs that are estimated in the program. So that's always something you can consider. And then also exploring the use of a city-sponsored improvement district as a way to fund it. It would act similar to a metro district, but I think we would probably steer you towards a metro district instead of sort of a general improvement district or other sort of tool. There are other potential incentives that we looked at, things like parking reductions, administrative fees, expediting, that could provide some benefits. I think parking reductions for certain elements might be something to consider. As we mentioned, the live work ran into a code issue with y'all in terms of how much parking you require for commercial space, and some flexibility for some non-traditional retail might be something you need to consider. We also consider things like a density bonus, but it's not likely something that we can really utilize here, given we're capped on density from an infrastructure capacity standpoint. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Mark, and we're going to sort of walk you through these key questions about how we sort of define your must-haves for the site.
That's great. Thanks, Matt. He also wore a civil engineer hat that time, too. This guy's great up there.
I have a lot of hats.
Yeah. So yeah, that's really the meat of the content we wanted to share with y'all. Moving forward, we have a couple of key questions we want to make sure you have your input on. But before we go into these kind of prompted questions, any clarifications or things that we want to go back and explore as part of the information that Matt and I shared in our presentation so far?
There's a few hands up. Okay. Councilmember Kondo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your presentation. About 9 months ago, I participated in a ULI tabletop workshop, and the takeaway that I got out of that, whether it's grounded in reality or not, is that my experience in that tabletop was that commercial actually generates more economic value than, say, housing. So when I read this PowerPoint, your presentation, I'm getting the impression that there's actually more economic value generated by townhomes and multifamily. And I wonder if you can help me square that understanding.
Yeah, sure.
Make sure I understand the ULI table. Are you talking about the urban plan workshop?
Yes.
Okay, great. Just want to make sure I understood.
Yeah, it depends on the perspective. From a developer's perspective, in terms of the amount of value they can get out of the land, There's more potential to get more value out of residential units because they can do a little more density, and there's a higher total project value from that. From a city's perspective, from the financial returns, it's much different. As you know, property tax rates for commercial spaces are much higher than they are for residential spaces. So when you're comparing those uses from a property tax standpoint, you're going to generate more revenue from commercial, as well as the potential for sales tax on site. And so when you're thinking from a fiscal responsibility, fiscal impact on the community, commercial is more of a driver for economic or for value from a civic standpoint, from a property tax, sales tax perspective. But from the developer's perspective, in terms of how much total value and development we can generate on the site, the market demand and the rates for residential spaces now outweigh what commercial space can generate in this site context. That's not always true. Say if you're in a more office-oriented node, like in an urban downtown area, an office building will likely generate more than a residential building. But in this context, the value of the commercial space will be dwarfed by the potential from the residential.
So the internal rate of return calculations that you did, is that from the perspective of a city or of the developer?
Ours is from the perspective of the developer, of trying to understand if we have a program that we can attract a partner to come build for us. From the quantitative perspective, a lot of the qualitative assessment that we are doing and the infrastructure capacity quantitative analysis is from the city's perspective. And so the way we're measuring the return for the city are back to those goals that Mark showed, those 6 goals of, are we achieving, a third place? Are we creating public facilities? Those are the ways that we sort of measuring whether these programs meet those goals. And then we also looked at from the developer's perspective to make sure we had something we could go to market with to be able to attract somebody to come build. And I would say we weren't going to provide a scenario to you that wouldn't hit those goals from the community's perspective. And so that sort of was a must-have for any of the scenarios we presented.
I guess where I'm struggling is from a fiduciary standpoint. I mean, obviously, you have to, from our perspective as a city, we want to make sure we're not doing this and being altruistic and giving so much value away to the developer or perhaps setting ourselves up for debt that is going to obviously strain the city finances. So that's the one thing that really is a head scratcher for me is how do you strike that balance?
So I think part of the challenge that we were struggling with is that originally the scope of the program was to provide one development scenario, preferred option from the feedback that we previously received. However, when we started going through the numbers and trying to at least represent what is a net neutral proposition, scenario 2 is really trying to represent that. And obviously it's not necessarily, it pulls further away from what I think is the aspiration that council reflected, but what we wanted to be able to give you is that perspective of the aspirational has a gap. This is what a non-gap scenario looks like, so you have a frame of reference when you're thinking moving forward, because likely what we're going to see happen is that a developer is going to come back with scenario 2, because that's where their margin is. So part of this conversation, as I see it, is couching the conversation with council is that to get to that aspirational, there's going to be a gap, which means we're bringing something to the table in addition to just, hey, here's our land, go develop it. I think more importantly is that if someone comes back and says, hey, I can't do it for this, you have that frame of reference to go, well, now we think that there's probably some margin of error for there. So I can see where that can be a wrestle or a reconciliation for everyone on council. But I think we were very strategic in trying to provide these 2 scenarios to kind of show you, as I think Mark was talking about earlier, is where are the guardrails for this conversation, and not just here tonight, but also moving forward, because we want messages to the community, but we also want to have this as the tool to talk with development community. And I won't belabor this point, but I think one of the things that we have learned over the last 8 years is that the development community wants to know what the appetite of city council is for them to step forward. And then when you talk about a city-owned property, it becomes that much more important. So that's once again part of the strategy here with what we're trying to accomplish tonight.
I appreciate that comment because, I feel like what we're doing is we're trying to do some chalk lines and figure out what the contours are of the range of possibilities. So I hope you understand that my line of questioning is in the spirit of just kind of fully walking that full battlefield from left to right.
And you guys, this is your first opportunity to really kind of see this and digest it. And so it's perfectly understandable where we anticipate that this might be where your headspace is. And I think part of this is why, it is a complex issue. And I think from my perspective as your planning director is I don't want you to have a document that you feel like is a pretty picture that you can put on a shelf, that you have a document that you can use in a way to help move a narrative forward to get you to a place that you can feel comfortable with. If someone comes to the table and says, here's my plan, you go, well, we know about the parking and we also have a good idea of we got a handle on what our infrastructure costs are against what your capital costs are for building this. And we think there's some room for negotiation. So that really is part of what we want to do with this is lay that groundwork with this exercise. And that's why EPS was brought in to help with that analysis. And that's why when you see on these slides, the internal rate of return, that's really developer speak to say, this is our break even, this isn't our break even. And I think that's really our messaging here for you guys.
And on that, Madam Mayor, 2 more questions if you'll indulge me.
Okay. We just have a lot of hands up, so
Yes, ma'am.
if you could go fast, that'd be
I
great.
promise I will keep it short.
Okay.
When you're doing your internal rate of return calculation, what is your time horizon? 10 years, 15, 20?
That's a good question. I think as a 10-year look with a sale, for like an apartment building component, we assume that it's fully built and then has 7 years operation, and then after that, there's an assumed sale of it. And that's how it creates the return. So it's about a 10-year window that we're looking at, yeah.
Gotcha. And then for the purposes of clarity, explain, please, the difference between levered and unlevered IRR.
Yes, yeah. So we looked at the project over a time series with a realistic assumption of how long it would take to build and then lease up and then sell in year 7. And so you can look at that 2 ways. You can look at that without any assumptions around the debt that a developer would take to build the project, like construction loans and things like that. And that gives you one measurement. And then we can also fill a model under typical assumptions what debt equity requirements and debt requirements would be to see if that would change the picture much, because sometimes lending rates have a huge impact on the financial feasibility. And so we want to look at it both unlevered being without the assumptions of debt and the costs associated with that, and levered includes debt and the costs associated with the debt.
So would it be reasonable to assume then that maybe from the developer's perspective, unlevered would be a possibility, say if the city did give concessions on, say, the price of the land or other incentives?
I think you would look at it both ways. Both can factor in that. Yeah, it's really sort of factoring in debt gives a better picture of really how much the equity the developer will have to bring to the table and how much they can borrow to build the project. So it's a little more realistic sort of picture of what the real sort of pro forma will be for the project.
Okay, thank you. I yield.
Thank you. Councilmember Walker?
Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for being here. No real questions. I'm just going to give my feedback. Brooke, you spoke of what our appetite as council would be, and I'm going to be honest, I don't have much of an appetite for either 2 of these. In scenario 1, I like to work and live retail on Memorial Drive, but the apartments, there's way too many of them. It's way too high of a building. Scenario 2, I like the smaller apartment building, but it's still too many. I like the retail and community center drive. I think that will bring people in. But however, that is separated from that central core you're talking about. So we've kind of deactivated the space in here. And I would like to see like block 22 in there. That second part of the townhomes have more retail there. So it's kind of a hybrid of 1 and 2. But right now the retail is so separated, there's no community. It'll just be driving straight into there, into that corner, and then we're right back out to Webster Lake. And I have my doubts that there's any third places for a community available here. I want this to be a place we can come hang out at, be a destination, and right now it's kind of just a housing block to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Burns?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I mean, not to like keep up bummer vibes, following my counterpart here, but sort of same. Specifically, like with scenario number 2, those retail block footprints. I know this isn't final; it's whatever, but like, I just feel like we have the marketplace that has big box retail space already that is currently unused. So adding more doesn't feel right, like the right choice for us. Yeah, I just feel, and maybe this is something like we just have to come to terms with, is that like what we want is not what the market wants, and maybe this is the best it's gonna get. I'm also wondering, when you said in your presentation earlier that the scenario of or it was like a consideration was like the mitigation of the old rec center. Is that just the old rec center we're considering, or are we considering all of the mitigation that needs to be done?
So the mitigation that was being referenced is for the north half of the site, for the remediation from the EPA grant that we're talking about.
Okay, so that is the consideration?
Yes, yes. So that whole site will be an environmental covenant that'll be placed on that for residential development.
Okay, so if that falls through, you don't think it's a big deal? That's what we're saying?
No, I think what we were trying to say is that after the remediation is done and having the environmental covenant on the site would not have an adverse impact to value or finding a developer to develop. And actually, we had a very long conversation multiple times. EPS is actually doing a project right now in Colorado Springs with a very similar situation. That's a mixed-use development. And so we were really, because one of the things that I was concerned about was market value and that ability to bring a developer in on an environmental covenant site. Typically, what you find is that if it's not a remediated site, you have different challenges and a higher hurdle to clear, but because we would basically be couching this as a remediated site, that hurdle kind of gets taken off of the table.
Okay. Feels like a big if at the moment. Yeah, thank you.
It's a variable that is out there, yes, it is. So.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Nowicki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, gentlemen, for this. This is very thorough, very illuminating. So I say that up front because I certainly, don't want to armchair quarterback it. I agree with Councilmember Walker about scenario 2, and Brooke, I think you nailed it when you said it kind of pulls further away from the aspirational, right? It's a bummer. Like, it's disappointing, again, because it's not. I don't think it fulfills those kind of the goals, the vision we wanted. I think scenario number 1 comes close to that. Kind of having that third space along Memorial Parkway, but I also hear you saying that that's maybe not what developers want. And it's like,
I think on that front, I think what's important to understand is that this is a heavier lift.
Yeah.
It's not that it's not viable. It's that it's going to be one where, as we move forward with a conversation with a future developer, they're going to want to put it up on Community Center Drive. We're going to want it over here, and that's going to be part of the conversation.
Right.
And then what they're going to say is, well, this is going to create a financial gap. Well, guess what? We have some understanding of what that might look like.
Okay.
So this is really sort of for you guys to understand, what does this playing field look like? And what we're trying to, part of this exercise, and this is why this is always like the meat and the potatoes, and this is where we do get in the weeds, is like, you've got to take a look at that financial feasibility so that we don't come back and then the developer goes with something completely different than anything like this. And you're like, what the heck? They didn't hear us. Really what we're trying to do here is to say, this is what those fiscal and infrastructure constraints do to the vision so that you guys feel like you have a grounded position to understand that reality.
Right.
It's tough.
Yeah, it is tough. And, because again, my concern is that it'll, the option 2 will kind of, it may work kind of more from a development perspective, but kind of be more you know, an extension of kind of that Webster Lake Promenade, just a few more businesses. I really think scenario one does offer a little bit more of that kind of placemaking or that kind of third, you know, that I hear community residents saying. However, you know, I think we, you know, there's a temptation to want to go big and to want to think long and like, okay, this would be a great place, you know, I want this to be a great place 30 years from, like, starting now to 30 years to function really well for people to come there. But that also depends on the community, and that depends on people, you know, supporting the businesses that go there. You know, everybody says they want mom and pop shops, yet, and I'm guilty of this too, yet I shop on Amazon more than, you know, more than probably I should, right? So it's dependent upon the community too, and not, and that's why I just wonder, maybe that's not feasible. So again, I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. If I could, perfect world, I'd go with scenario one, so.
Councilmember Goff?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I'm kind of, would be more inclined of these two to scenario one. I have a couple of comments about that. One is that I have seen people bring Perry's Pizza to the park to have picnics. And so if we had, you know, I don't know what kind of businesses are envisioned there. I don't want any big box thing, but something where people could.
So just to be clear, we're talking 13,000 square feet and 16,000 square feet. So the entire strip that is Perry's Pizza is about 10,000 square feet. So we're not talking anything bigger than that. So and I think the other part of this is that I don't think we're talking AAA credit franchise.
Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking, I mean, you know, obviously the developers are going to do their own research and whatnot, but in scenario one, with it being closer to the theater and the rec center, you know, people are going to be going through, you know, to those places, and they're, you know, I could imagine businesses that would be successful in that setting, not on Community Center Drive, but because of that. So that was just the comment about that. And I would also say that the state, I still think, is or will be trying to force some land use changes. And so some of these concerns about parking lots and density and whatnot, you know, I don't know how much that's going to come into play in the future. I don't know if anybody has any idea about that. I really would like to see more condos instead of apartments. I want to see owner-occupied property, because in terms of building community and taking care of, you know, that the sense of place, that would be what I would like to see. And I have no objection to the tall, dense buildings. I know it's ugly and people don't like them, but I mean, honestly, if we are going to try to cope with people's demand for housing, that's how you do it. And so if they're owners, the owners of the apartments live there, they're going to take care of it better. So I don't have any problem with that part of it.
And Councilmember Goff, if I can, one of the things that we did look at, and if you'll notice on here, we do have multifamily also / condo identified here.
I saw that.
You know, there was legislation that was passed that is addressing construction defect. The question, it's so early to know whether or not it would have a substantive change. We did ask the team to basically evaluate whether multi versus condo had a substantive difference in the pro forma on the financial side, and effectively it is not relative, it's not incremental enough to make comment on. So that's why we have it as multifamily condo. That was very intentional in this presentation, is that it's not just multifamily. We can consider condo. The big question is anybody going to want to do condo, knowing where the legislation is? And I actually have not had enough of a chance to really dive into that to really know, did we really solve the problem with this last effort or not? So
yeah, okay, yeah, I know. I've heard mixed comments on that one. Go ahead.
I'd also, I mean, I think part of our exercise tonight is to hear exactly what you're saying in terms of these are the things that we must have. And so far, I mean, we're still going through the comments, obviously, but this making sure that we create a sense of place and putting retail in a place that I think we're going to do that is key. I'm hearing a preference for ownership housing. And so those are the aspects that as you define out an RFP for a developer, you can say, this is what we're looking for. This is what we want here. And if you're able to bring our vision, we have some tools that can help you. And that's kind of the messaging that we want to be able to create, and understanding from your all's perspective, what are those must-haves and what are we open to in terms of supporting a project are really the parameters we need to help city staff create a solicitation and effective communication tools for the community and the development community.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess my last comment would be if somehow we are going more towards scenario 2, we end up going that way, and it was listed as having more parking spaces, I would like to use some of those parking spaces for more green space. So, I mean, you know, if you have to have parking, you have to have parking, but, you know, if there would be any way to you know, take some of that.
I think the big thing there on that is really, it's the uses on the south side of Memorial. It's the same parking field. It's just that the uses require less parking. So under scenario 1, the commercial, it's the same parking lot, and likely what we would be looking at doing with, once the city hall's torn down, is looking at a parking program that would effectively reflect this. But on the north side of the site, really what we were trying to do is just make sure we can make it park. And one of the things I want to emphasize to council is that parking probably next to the water allocation for this area, for this particular, under the integrated water resource plan, parking is probably the biggest constraint. Driving the development programming is because of the heightened concern about the spillover of parking into the civic uses. We were very, very strategic about not doing that. So if we could consider, as was mentioned, like bonus densities, less parking, we could definitely change some of the programming around, but it would change the pro forma. But I think once again, it's like the concerns. So there's like all of these things we tried to stitch together to try to find that balance overall. But to your comment, I just want to mention, like, we will likely end up building something very similar to what you're seeing here on the old City Hall site. It's the uses that change the availability.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, those are my comments.
Councilmember Jaramillo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, gentlemen. Got a list of pros and cons that I have here of each example, but also you know, everything that we've been mentioning. From the lack of parking, it's been known here. It's also been a problem at different apartments nearby, especially during events. You know, you have to have assigned parking, and that's something I've dealt with during events. You know, that's going to become a real issue. I feel if we put this much residential multifamily in here. I do enjoy the idea more of condos and townhomes where there's ownership, because then those individuals or families, they'll take better care of the space. It'll have more sense of belonging, and it won't become run down like any other apartment does, because it's really, you know, a lot of people that live in apartments, it's temporary. You know, it's not for a very long time, and that's one issue with multifamily that comes to mind. Also, was also brought up was, you know, the height. You know, there's going to be obstruction of our view of the mountains, which has been an issue with the Alexan. I've heard it before. It's pretty monstrous. So I mean, that would ruin the view, let's say, of when you enjoy the park. You know, you run around the park or bike it, you're going to lose a lot of that. And I think that's something that you know, people want to enjoy too. They want to enjoy that view that we have, you know, of the Flatirons looking west. You know, when you go up and you go into our rec center, beautiful view. They did a great job of making sure that our natural beauty is being featured. Also, we have a wonderful view that could be utilized of our park. You know, that's something that I think we should also utilize if we're going to have a space-making place. You know, I'll go to Perry's and I'll request to go upstairs because I want to, you know, enjoy that, you know, upper level view, that feel that you get being on a patio. That's something that you get when you go to Denver and stuff. And I think that might create a a cell for commercial when you're going along Community Center Drive. I feel like that's a big time sell. Also, the live work doesn't seem feasible. You know, we see that in here with the number 1. So, yeah, I don't see that happening. Talked about third places. You know, that's social interaction. We want it to be fluid. We don't, you know, want it to be welcoming. Don't want to feel like you're, I don't know, like in a neighborhood. I don't know. Like that's just how I feel. I don't know, but how other people feel. Mentioned townhomes and condos. Yeah, I think that's really the big. I feel like the big sell would be of if we're doing any commercial, it would be like it's a destination to enjoy, you know, views of, you know, from North Glen but making it so it's not taken away from the people that, you know, are enjoying just the park itself. Because I look at number 1, and I don't know if that large, you know, 5 stories would completely blot out the sky. You know, once the sun starts setting, I'm just trying to, you know, number 1 in orange, the multifamily condo. I'm just thinking of like what that's going to look like when you're enjoying the park. So maybe we look at what other places have done, like Sloan's Lake or other places that.
I don't think you want us to consider the towers they have at St. I'm just
Oh, that's to the south though.
Yeah,
But
just kidding.
I'm saying like, you know, like.
Could you go back to the shadow comment for just to make sure I'm understanding of where you're having concerns about the shadow cast for the,
I'd say number 1 in orange, that's the,
so like where about the shadows were you, because the shadows will all be going north towards the,
no, I'm just saying like it would, I'm concerned that you wouldn't be able to see, say the Flatirons.
oh, view shed, sorry, okay, that makes
Yeah.
sense, all right, thank you, yeah.
You know, like that's the concern that comes to mind there, but I mean, that's from what I've witnessed with the election. You know, you go down the hill and it's like a giant wall, and I don't know, I just have mixed feelings about it. I mean, it's cool for the people that are going to live there. You know, they got a cool view when you're facing west, but I mean, I don't know how it's going to look when you go to the future Odell Berry Park over here and you're looking out that way. So I'm just thinking about the people that enjoy the public space too, because not everybody's going to live there and not going to be able to have access to it. So if we do, you know, go this way, I'd say more townhomes, more condos. If we do the commercial, use our natural beauty to be celebrated, but not too exclusive where it takes away from our parks and our views from our parks. And I digress.
Councilmember Roper.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not going to spend too much time repeating what my fellow colleagues have said, but I do like on number 1, the downtown feel of a destination. However, my like for it stops pretty much there. And I will say just at the Juneteenth celebration, we were able to push tables and stuff out into that driveway, and that really opened up the festival lawn. I wonder if that would not be possible if people were living on that other side. I piggyback on what Councilmember Jaramillo said. I think, yes, for the people who buy the housing, that would be amazing. For the developer, it'd be amazing to stack up. But will that take away from our small town feel? Will it take away from our Tree City USA? I mean, we have so many things to be celebrated here. But again, now when we stand at the Justice Center, we see a huge apartment complex instead of the Flatirons. And I know 30 years from now, that's not what I want. That's not what I want my children and grandchildren to have, is a big apartment complex. So I think we need to refocus on where is a place where we can come together as a community, place for celebrations, shopping, really have that niche that is special to North Glen, and I don't believe that it's big housing. Thank you.
So we have more comments, but I'm going to kind of go through. I was taking notes as council members were sharing and as you were presenting, and, you know, I'm confused. I was very confused during the presentation, and I started to feel like maybe I was losing my mind a little bit, and then my council colleagues started commenting, and I was like, oh, great. I'm not nuts. I've got this. Because I was really confused during your presentation. You said scenario 2 is the one that you're going to want. I was like, not at all.
I was saying from a developer's perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, not from the, yeah, I'm not trying to put words in your all's mouth.
Well,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
but I my fear was you got that impression from our last conversation, and I was like, absolutely not. Okay. So I went back to the timeline a little bit, and for those of us that have been on council just a smidge longer than others, this is a repeated conversation. We're having this conversation over and over, right? We had these drawings, we had, you know, all sorts of conversations. And then we moved City Hall and we started over. And we had more drawings and more scenarios and more feedback. And then we said, we're going to need parking. And to me, that was a quick thing. It was like, hey, we'll just take this part out and give you some parking and be done. And that opened up a whole new conversation. And so here we are again. And I'm like, wow, we're doing this a lot. And so I have a question about timeline. Like, how far out is this conversation? And how many times are we going to do this? Do you know? Like, timeline-wise, as far as, you know, we've got the former City Hall coming down. I had a conversation with someone. I will find her business card because she was very positive about our grant. And so I think we might be okay. I was at the Climate Mayor's meeting. I have her card. But so I think that's probably going to move forward. But what are we talking about timeline?
So what we were planning on doing is the planning department through the sub-area plans, we have an engagement strategy that we were going to take advantage of this summer that we outlined in the staff report. And that our objective was to go out and roadshow this concept, garner feedback, provide that feedback to the council, and provide a final report here probably in September. Based on that feedback and the final report, we would then seek direction from council to go out and solicit for a public-private partnership process and try to retain a developer to come in and present those folks to you guys. So with that timeline, we would probably be looking at something in the first quarter of next year to bring that forward to you, and then we would sit down and do an exercise where the developer then comes and crunches their numbers, provides a development plan, you guys review it, and then we move forward with entitlements and then development. So I would say that 2026 would be a year where we'd be working with a developer, and 2027 is when we'd be moving forward with construction.
Okay. Well, as was already stated, I'm really concerned about the vision for both of these scenarios, and I don't feel like they're reflective of conversations that we've had, either past councils or even current council, talking about our identity as a city, what we believe North Glen is about, like all of that, I think got missed. I mean, from the last conversation, and I heard what you said, this is the most financially optimal. I don't know that we asked for that. Like, it's really bad. Scenario 2 makes me want to cry. It's so awful. And I think we will get nothing but feedback. I mean, a couple people have mentioned, not our decision, but the high rises going up, holy cow, changed the whole, like, just dynamic of our city. And we are getting feedback, like, a lot. It comes up a lot. And so I don't think, I mean, you're hearing we don't have a vision for high rises on this site. Every time I'm out on Festival Lawn, the question is, what are you guys going to do over there? What's going to happen over there? What are we going to put over there? Please don't put any housing. I mean, they say it in that question. So we know we have to put some housing, but we keep talking about the vision for it, and it got completely derailed. And because it happens every single time, it feels like there's a ploy to just wear us down to the point where we're going to be so exhausted, we're
No.
going to go, fine, take all the housing.
Mayor, I think what you're expressing is what we recognize as what is the financial feasibility of this.
Right.
And what we're trying to do is show you what is financially feasible that tries to attempt to meet your vision. I think if we were just to give you your vision, there's not a developer that's going to want to touch it. I think
Okay.
that's the challenge. And so this is where the reconciliation comes. And I do want to also mention that with regard to the mid-rise structure that's proposed, whether it's condo or multifamily, it was strategically placed where it is because it is not taller than the hotel. And when you look at a view shed corridor and what its visual impact would be to the community and to the park, it's no more than what's already there. And so part of the idea is that in order to incorporate that type of product into the development plan, we were very strategic to put it as close as we could to that building because it doesn't create an additional visual obstruction of the view corridor to the west or anything else because that hotel already has that impact. But more back to your bigger question about wearing council down or being misled, what we're trying to do is we heard exactly what you guys said, and then we put these filters on it. And the reason why we are where we are with this is because we have limited parking, we have limited water, and we have the expectations of providing adequate parking for the Rec Senior Theater Center. And all of these things come together, and this is kind of the output that got generated. One of the things that we also talked about is if we just took out the residential, does this work? And it from a development standpoint, there's not enough demand there to support that.
So I hear you because and we've heard this, right?
Yeah.
And I don't believe we're being misled. I think we're being led, not misled, but definitely like this is all you're going to get. And that, I mean, I guess my other question is, what if we do nothing? Can you play that out? What does that look like if we just do nothing?
So we'd go back to the drawing board and reimagine whether we make this a different type of use, whether we create a park space there or do something different along those lines. It's really, the world is your oyster here on what you would want to ultimately consider. I will also tell you that COVID has changed everything. We saw that with the construction of this building. The market realities is really what we're trying to bring to the table tonight, because what I don't want to do as your staff member is to present something to you that doesn't have a snowball's chance of really coming to fruition, and then getting a developer telling you, this is what you get. This is really trying to ground the conversation into what we think is the reality of the market against the expectation of council.
Okay.
I think an important part of scenario 2 is what is the least desirable configuration, the best thing that we could possibly put forward that puts all the economics on the table. So that was, I think, more of an academic exercise than a recommended y'all should do scenario 2. But absent putting kind of financial support into the process, that's likely something that you would
Right.
receiving guidance.
However, didn't you just say your plan is to take this out to the community? Because I really don't want you to take that out to the community.
Council can give that direction. I mean, it's up to you. This was the program, this was the plan of action that we put forth, was to hear your vision, filter it against the constraints that we've presented tonight, and then go out and get feedback, and then based on that feedback, come back and present the final report, and then make a decision on whether we want to go forward with a public-private partnership process. So.
Okay. Now, you've been on this road with us,
Yep.
right? Are you starting to just be like, the wheel has come back around? Because, I mean, we're here at a frustrating point. I can hear that from not just myself on the dais, but I think we've done this exercise. Like, remember the last time we worked with, I think it was Jay, interviewed every single one of us and created a vision, and then here was his plan, right? Here's his version of these diagrams. And I do know that there's pre-COVID, post-COVID. I also know, that's why I asked about timeline, because the market is changing so fast. And while I agree with Councilmember Nowicki that I may not shop at a little boutique, I'm going to go get ice cream there. I'm going to go have an experience there. I'm going to have I can't buy everything on Amazon, right? Like,
Nor do you want to.
no, and there's some things that, we've talked about that experience of being on the site, right? If you go to the rec center, you go to a show, do you go and have coffee afterwards? Yeah, you could go to Panera, but there are a lot of people that don't favor chain restaurants. And if there's an accessible downtown feel, which we keep talking about, and when you completely erase it, it's not only discouraging, but there's a piece where I'm like, I know we had a conversation not that long ago, and I just was so surprised that this was one of those scenarios.
The commercial designation is not in this particular one of the downtown feel, which I think at that point was still largely organized around Memorial, rec centers, or destination, is that kind of half block or half site, 2/3 site designation of the retail on Memorial. Or I guess if you can help me understand where in this particular one.
Scenario 1 is far superior to scenario 2.
Yeah.
And I think we do need parking, but to Councilmember Goff's point, we don't need to pave Paradise and put up a parking lot everywhere. I mean, it's like double the amount of space, parking spots, right? It went from 60 to what, 100?
Those are, surplus in service of the Rec Senior Theater Center. In addition to, the rest of the program is entirely accommodating your current code and we took a very conservative approach to that because we didn't want to come in and say, hey, if you take all these, reductions here, here, and here, you can create all these potential pieces. A bigger thing is that both of these, and this is all about 25% of the last residential program that my colleague Jay and I worked on with y'all. If you get down to those pieces, the overall unit count has been cut, I think, by 75%. So it's a much smaller amount in that space, and then the associated commercial has in turn scaled down accordingly.
Okay.
So, Mayor, if I may, you asked an initial question that we've been down this road before. So the reality is that the previous exercise isn't market. We had to go back and revisit what your vision was and then to test it against today's market, because the original vision isn't a vision that can still play because so much has changed. So really, I think this is really just more of saying, here's where the market is today against your expectations. And that's really what we were trying to bring forward today. I don't know that there is a home run here that exists because of the constraints that we have for the site. And I think that's the challenge. The reason why we presented not one but two is because we saw that. And I think part of the reason why you see two up here is because that's what we anticipate is going to be more of what the developer is going to bring versus what you guys would like to see. And that's why we wanted to provide that context. But to the comment about, we're grinding through and doing this, we're really just trying to make sure that we're meeting your expectation, because if you don't feel comfortable with this, then we can take a different course of action, and that's why we're here, is to get your feedback on that.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think we probably didn't hit the mark tonight in a way that I would think we want to go forward. There was some support for scenario 1. There was some disappointment with both scenarios. I think when I go back to the key questions, the must-haves, I feel like I'm just repeating myself. Like we told you last time what the must-haves were. And so we have that question again. I don't quite know how to answer that. I feel like we're stuck. Is there a place where, a scenario where we just develop it ourselves and we don't hire a developer?
Yes.
We don't have to sell our vision to someone else?
We can develop it ourselves, but I think the question then becomes, can we afford to build it? And if they build it, will they come?
Right.
So.
Okay. Well, longer timeline question. So if I go back to the timeline, So we signed a contract with you guys, and we're using you, right? You're working hard. You're pulling together a lot of stuff. At what point does your contract end and we have to re-up it? Have we spent all the money? I mean, I was told it was over $90,000 for the contract.
Yeah, the contract was, we are essentially at the end of the contract for MIG based on the original scope. And as I said, what MIG and EPS did is originally the scope had called for one preferred scenario. And when we realized the challenges and the market analysis, we wanted to provide reference by bringing forward two different scenarios. So you had a more grounded base of what we think is how to best manage your expectations. So we have effectively gone to the end of the contract here with where we're at right now.
Okay. So then we would have had to re-up it to do anything else moving forward, right?
So moving forward, the public engagement component was going to be done by planning staff.
Okay.
And then once we got that information, we would circle back with MIG and then put the final touches on the report that would consolidate the information. And there's, with the infrastructure report, the economic feasibility, as well as the overall concept plan. And the idea would be is that document would serve as your playbook moving forward, and that's something that we would present to as an attachment for a P3 engagement.
Okay.
From MIG's perspective, I mean, you alluded back to the original master planning process. When I was working with Jay on that, I didn't have any kids, and now my oldest of 3 girls is 8.5. So this is something that we're committed to as a company. It's something that we really appreciate the opportunity to work with y'all throughout this. And it's you know, pandemics aside and all that, things shift. So we want to make sure that we get to where y'all need to be in the end. And I think this particular piece of the process is we really got into the design of the site and the heartbreak that we have in thinking about where the vision was, what we've heard, what the realities are. It's one of those trying to find a path forward that gives you all a direction that gets the change made, as opposed to, oh, great, we'll see you again in
Yeah.
through 2 years.
Well, and please know, I'm not critiquing your work when I ask about your contract. I just know we've been working with you. I looked at that timeline. I was like, we have to be done at some point, and in order to move forward, we're going to have to spend more money, is what I'm thinking. But your work product is fine.
Yeah, well, well, two things. I think our goal is to set you all up to move to the next step to solicit a partner. And I think the framework, or the plan that we're creating for you gets you there, assuming we have a concept you want to take to market or to the community. The other thing is we really wanted to push hard on making sure that you saw what you would likely get out of a solicitation now, instead of getting all this momentum and excitement up for a solicitation and then having the responses come back and have them completely miss what your expectation was. Because that, I think, would really put you in that sort of cycle of starting all over again. And so making sure that we're grounding things now is to try to prevent that future potential understanding of what the market's going to bring and versus what you want. And so I'd rather have you guys be frustrated now than to go solicit developer and be frustrated then, because that's going to be even worse in my opinion. So yeah.
I agree, and thank you for that clarification. I think the concern I had was I want to make sure that you guys and staff have a clear vision, because if you're taking it out there and you take scenario 2 with full confidence that council's on board,
yeah,
and then we get a bunch of, you know, examples of that, we're just going to cry. Like, it'll be so sad. So I feel like there has to be a compromise in there somewhere. I'm not sure. But we also, I've talked enough, and there's a ton of questions.
Let me throw this out. Is that if you don't want us, if you want to proceed with a community engagement and you don't want to see 2, that's fine. The thing that we would be talking, though, when we do this, is that there's likely a financial gap.
Yeah.
And so that would be part of the messaging. And if that's fine, great. We don't have to, this is really what you guys would like, what you're comfortable with. I think once again, this is a tough exercise because the market just isn't where it would otherwise want to be in order to really bring, I think, what you guys would like to see. And so that's part of the challenge that we face. But in terms of moving forward, we can take a pause, we can revisit this, we don't have to move. I will say that, you know, the impetus for all of this is that this does have a life cycle. This has a shelf life. this analysis. And so there's always this issue of, you know, you don't want this to go stale, you want to have something that's relevant, you want to have something, yada, yada, yada. All the comments that have been made already. So, but to council's point, we can take whatever direction you feel comfortable with. We're not trying to say you have to present these two scenarios. We're presenting this so that you can react to it and tell us what you feel and how you would like to move forward.
Okay. Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this process seemed to have started many moons ago. And so I wonder what is, when Madam Mayor brought up the point of like, what if we do nothing? Like, what is the point of, what is the harm in waiting? What is the harm in like waiting for a partner who sees our vision? I mean, it's been nothing for however long. Like, what is the vibe there?
There's no harm in waiting. I mean, that's the honest, direct answer, is we're not going to go to the market and take something that council doesn't want, that the community doesn't want.
Yeah.
So I've heard loud and clear tonight that council absolutely does not want scenario 2, and that you're not completely happy with scenario 1. So going back to the drawing board is really looking at what does the next iteration of scenario 1 look like. That's what I'm hearing. Council can tell me if I'm wrong. I'm hearing that you want to prioritize community gathering, placemaking over housing. So housing either completely off the table or homeowner occupied on the table is what I've heard. And then in terms of the commercial retail space, we've heard feedback on that, but we don't have to work with someone. That's not going to bring us the vision. And unfortunately, you know, the past shows that we hired a former developer that we thought shared our vision, and then demonstrated they didn't share the vision, and we cut ties with that developer, which was the appropriate thing to do. So we have a proposed timeline that is subject to the direction of council tonight, and if we want to take a pause, knowing that you have a discussion coming up about Washington Point redevelopment, you know, we're continuing efforts with the marketplace. There's other pieces, you know, in our universe of North Glen from an economic development perspective that are at play that might be time to take a step back and really think of things more globally and what does council truly want for this site? Or maybe you have enough of a vision tonight that you're like, well, take this piece to the community, ask the community these questions to help inform whatever that pivot might look like. Food for thought there.
Yeah. And City Manager Gunder, I think you like very well articulated what's been going on in my head during this discussion, specifically thinking globally about North Glen as a whole, because this is really our last development opportunity. And so I really think it needs to be smart. And I really think like thinking through all of the surrounding areas and water, like that 100% water capacity was also a little worrisome, I'm not gonna lie. I'm just having a lot of, ooh, you know what I mean? And so I'm sort of in favor, and not to like say just because like, you know, I wasn't part of the beginning, but like at this juncture, having to make this, thinking through what the community needs, what our city needs and wants, I just think taking a better strategic look of what's happened since 2017 and what is potentially happening presently is a smart choice.
I would agree, and I think that I know we need to make some decisions sooner, and I think when I look at scenario 1, I like the big round puffy trees. No, no, but you know,
Takes a while to grow them like that.
it does. It's very, very careful. But I think the parking that was added by the theater, you know, if we were to develop that, not fully, but even half of that, develop it. If something changes later, that's not the biggest thing in the world.
That's correct.
But we can at least meet that resident need sooner, because we do hear that a lot, and that space is very activated. So if we were able to provide some parking in the meantime, that seems to make some sense to me.
So Madam Mayor, that is our plan right now. The tear down of the building and then putting in parking is the next step. That's regardless of this effort. This is just trying to show how the two integrate.
Yeah. Well, just in case the developer's like, I'm going to move that parking. I don't care. As long as we have it, it doesn't matter. But I think,
Understood.
There's a place for asking for feedback. I mean, we get unsolicited feedback all the time, and it's parking. Don't put high rises there. And we would love a cute little downtown that has some sweetness to it, that has some character. And then obviously we need to stay true to our sustainability goals. So there's that. Councilmember Kondo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think the challenge here is that perhaps there was a vision that was 7 or 8 years old. And at the time, the economics and the price of raw material and labor and all of that might have supported it. But now that we are post-pandemic, you're looking at a 30% increase in material cost. Direct labor costs are up 25%, if not more. And so the vision back then, when you apply the cost structure, I think the exercise that you all did kind of tells us that, well, it's not really going to work. Or we can make it work, but the city is going to have to make significant concessions or incentives. And that, to me, is a significant concern, because when I look at, say, for example, Broomfield's recent experience with the former First Bank Center and not receiving a single developer bid for that, I often wonder if perhaps Broomfield had a similar sort of experience. Maybe they had a vision, but unfortunately the parameters and the economic situation just didn't pencil out. And so nobody really jumped on it. And then finally, I'd like to add, I mean, let's face it, we have turbulence right now in consumer sentiment. Commodity prices are all over due to policy in some part, as well as supply and demand. And then you're looking at the bond markets and interest rates. And to me, right now, when there is so much uncertainty, I'm not sure it's wise to embark on a very expensive project like this that could potentially put the city in a hole. So I'm definitely in favor with Councilmember Burns. I'm also in favor of, Madam Mayor, your priority here to make sure that there's adequate parking for the theater. I'm totally in agreement with that, which it's already happening. But that is kind of where I'm sitting right now mentally. I think we ought to put a pause on this. And again, it's not any insinuation about the work that you did. You do a lot of heavy lift. When you go through deep looking at your calculations, I went through page 52 or 57. I finally got the answers that I was asking for, which goes to show you how much I prepare for these meetings. So I don't want to discount that. I just think back to the time when I was doing mergers and acquisitions and how many times I had to do a net present value or internal rate of return model to present to the executives, and they would say, nope, this is not going to work. You got to figure out another way to make it work. And sometimes the answer was, this is not the right time and place to do this. And I just feel like at this point, right now, based off of what I've seen, I don't think this is the right time and place to move forward. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Nowicki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I know there's a plan to do kind of listening sessions, taking some of this to the community, right? Is that?
That is what we've identified as a next step in this process.
Okay. Okay. Well, if you don't want it to be a kind of a total wash, I hear, what the majority of my council is saying with pushing pause, and I would probably be in favor of that too. However, I am curious how the community would respond to, again, scenario number 1. I would not take scenario 2 to them. I think the mayor made that pretty apparent. But having scenario 1 and maybe drafting, you could probably do this over a weekend. Scenario 2 is just a big killer park with the cool kids play area and be like, that's not feasible, but just see what they say. Right. I don't know, something along those lines if you need, this way it's not a total wash. Because I would be curious to see if the community is interested in kind of that third space, because I've heard several times about mom and pop shops and things like that. Just to see kind of how they respond to it. So there's some.
Can I interject something really quickly? Councilmember Nowicki, you brought up scenario 2, a different scenario 2 could be a big park with a swing. That is possible if council wants to relook at this site. And I think that's where clarity around what does placemaking look like, what does community gathering look like, that's where we need to dive further into, okay, if you set aside housing, commercial retail, or we want some level of commercial retail, and you want this space to be, aside from parking, that's, a must. If you want it to be more of an open green space, not open space, green space park area where you can continue events such as Food Truck Carnival and support the evolution of events that council talked about in December of 2017, on December 16th of last year. That's all possible. The only difference is that requires subsidy by the city and timeline that looks farther out. We have one other park in front of us that we need to get fully funded and constructed. But if council, if you shift the vision and say, we want that, we figure out how to make that happen.
Right. And I want to be clear, I think I disagree maybe with the most of my council members in regard to, I don't necessarily view renters as, I think having a placemaking of kind of what scenario 1 encompasses, having the townhomes where people can rent if they, or can buy if they can afford, and where people can rent. I too love the views. And I mean, let's not kid ourselves. There's a highway right next to it. So, let's take that into account. So, yeah.
Councilmember Goff.
Thank you, Mayor. Hopefully, this isn't going to take too long, but I agree with Councilmember Nowicki that would really like to hear from the community what their response is to something like this and maybe whatever alternative we come up with. But I do also want to keep in mind that this is the Civic Center, and so if there's something that we can think about how we would plan to kind of create the feeling of like downtown North Glen or whatever, that we should still keep that in mind. And maybe it's something, I know early on there was some discussion about how maybe the senior center could at some point not be in the same building with the theater, but in some other building. So maybe we could build some things that have more to do with the city providing experiences or services to the community that aren't housing, which is really what everybody seems to think we need right now. But it could be some other things like that, like look at our Parks and Recreation Playbook or strategic plan. What are some things that we had visioned in those documents that maybe could be done in this space? But otherwise, I mean, if people want to put pause on this for a while, the only reason I'd say not to do that is that when we come back to it 5 years or whatever we come back to it, everything will be much more expensive. So that's the reason for doing something now. And maybe we could do some partial development, like just what's in the red and purple on our scenario 1. Well, I mean, the yellow and orange is what everybody seems to think we need right now. But anyway, I guess I'm feeling a little confused about what we want to do, and if the majority of you want to put a pause on this, I'm okay. I'd like to hear what the residents have to say, I think, before I made a decision.
I don't necessarily want to put a pause on it. I think, and I don't think a park is a good idea. There's a lovely park right next door. That would be redundant and bizarre. I think sticking in line with the vision and our identity as a city, and I don't believe, to Councilmember Condo's comment, I don't believe it's an old vision 7 years ago. I don't think that's it. I think it's still the values. It's still what we're hearing from residents. And if there's a way to compromise, if there's a way, I mean, I would love to take it out and say, to have a developer come and say, I'm super interested in this site. It's on 120th and I-25. It's very visible. It has a lot of appeal. These are the ideas we have, right? And if they come back and they say scenario 2 is all we're willing to do, we're going to say thank you, no thank you, and move them along. I think there's a place for having the conversation. I think we still can take it out to the residents and say, what would you like? And I can predict what we're gonna hear. They don't want a high rise there, but there's quite a few residents that do recognize we do need some housing options. They get that. They do want a sense of space right there. And we've taken this out enough times that they've heard it. They've heard the discussions. They've heard us describe it. They've heard us set the plan. Some of them, if they're really involved, they've seen the original Civic Center master plan, you know, whatever the original vision was. So they've been along this journey with us. So I don't think scrapping it and starting with absolutely nothing is the right thing to do. Maybe taking a little bit of a pause while we gather more feedback. And then I think we need to dangle it out there and talk to people.
So one thing I do want to throw out that was also strategic with scenario 2, because it got mentioned a couple of different times in this last conversation, is those community members that are like, do not subsidize development. You have an example that says this is what that would look like versus a placemaking opportunity. And so it helps frame the conversation to say, you're not going to get what you want if you have a break-even net neutral proposition per se, and that in order to get closer to placemaking, you would probably need to subsidize it. Is this the right answer? Not necessarily, but at least people know that if you want a placemaking opportunity, you want the mom and pop, that it's not in this day and age, in this time, at this point in time, it's not market supported. And so I think when we go out to talk to the community, if we do that, that would be kind of how we would frame this conversation, because quite frankly, you are right. In 2015 through 2017, we had a different mindset with the city council. It had to be a net neutral proposition. You had to show us how it was going to work and what uses would make that work, and that if it had a placemaking component to it, great. But it had to show that it penciled. And that has evolved with the council as well, where that's not necessarily the top priority. And I think just to kind of put a bow on this, there are tools in our toolbox with NURA and with other Metro District to bridge financial gap. So I think there's still room for that to happen, but it's you guys understanding that those are going to have to come to the table to get closer to that part of where you want to be.
Yeah. Well, and I think doing it right is going to cost money.
There you go.
I mean, I think that's just
But
the
I think
reality of it.
From a messaging standpoint, to get that placemaking opportunity, to when if we communicate to the public that it's not a market-supported option, and that it's going to require a Metro District, it's going to require potential, TIF funds, it's going to require these other tools in order to bring that vision to fruition. And so that could be part of the conversation, and that's kind of why we were also with this 2-scenario option, was backstopping against those who are like, you said back then that you weren't going to bring any public dollars, and so this is our way of showing that this is that's a counterpoint to that messaging.
Okay. Councilmember Burns, did you have your hand up again?
I'm okay.
Thank you. Councilmember Kondo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do want to clarify my prior remark. I don't did not intend to insinuate that it's an old idea, but it's an idea whose time is probably somehow or another, all the elements that make it feasible 7, 8 years ago, all of those have changed. And so
I
now
don't
it's
know that it
much
was
more
feasible
challenging.
7 years ago. It's not, it was about the vision and the values.
Sure.
It was not about how it
I will be
penciled.
very clear.
Yeah.
I'm still on board with the vision and the values of the city. I mean, that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
But the other thing, I just emailed the days along with Brooke and City Manager Guyer. I believe Mayor Pro Tem and I forget which NLC or ML or CML it was, but I think there was a breakout session about creating temporal marketplaces using Connex boxes and
We
things.
can't have 2 meetings going at once. Can't be emailing council in the middle of a meeting.
Okay, understand. Thank you. I appreciate you setting me straight. For your reading pleasure later, maybe there's a possibility of creating a pop-up marketplace. And that way you could beta test the concept, right? You might have asphalt put down to be able to accommodate these things. You may not necessarily run water, but you got electricity and everything. And therefore, you're creating an opportunity for small businesses to come in, because it sounds like what you're really interested in, Madam Mayor, is perhaps an ice cream shop or, something that's not totally nationwide Ben and Jerry's or whatever. So you could do that and test it and see whether the community, whether the economics are going to work. And if it doesn't, well, okay, at least you don't have to tear down a building where, you ran water, sewer, and you've got bricks and mortar and all that other stuff that you got to tear down. You bring in a lift and you take away the Connex box. You call it good. So I offer that. I get what you're saying, Councilmember Nowicki, that let's not waste this opportunity. Let's see if there is an opportunity to get a pulse. I'm all in favor of that.
So let's see if I can figure out where we landed. So scenario 1 and 2 generated some conversation.
Little AI summaries.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm going to attempt. Yes, so you got our brains moving. And you got a lot of feedback, right? I don't think scenario 2 is our favorite. So scenario 1 was closer, but there's some questions about feasibility. Maybe we take a pause, but not a 5-year pause, like a short pause to regroup.
When I mentioned pause, I was thinking a couple weeks.
Okay.
Not 5 years.
No.
So let me see if I can help, and then I'll repeat what I think we heard, and then tell me if we did not get to where you want us to be. Staff's going to come back to council with, we can outline what the priorities are in terms of community gathering space, placemaking. So scenario 1, take scenario 2 off the table. So we're talking about scenario 1. And then come back with the list of questions that we're going to vet with the community. So we can bring this back either, we can probably try to pull it together by July 7th. I know that's quick, Brooke, but we can, in order, we'll miss 4th of July. Were you guys planning on coming to 4th of July Festival for public input?
No.
When's the first
I think it's
public
the
input?
North Glen Nights, so it's every Thursday.
Okay. So we would still want to try to shoot for the July 7th meeting in order to accommodate being available at the neighborhood night sessions. So we'll come back with, here's what, these are the questions we want to ask the community with scenario 1. We can put some thought around what other, we heard council, so we can present it as, council's placing value on owner-occupied housing, placemaking, community gathering space, not high-rises, which
I'm interpreting as, when we hear high rises, it's 5 stories. Five
Yeah.
stories is a high rise, right? Not in planning technical terms, but to our residents, right? And so we would need to tweak the labels with scenario 1 to, and ask questions is what I'm thinking around what type of housing beyond homeowner occupied, what housing would you like? And then, the questions around what's important about this place that you want to preserve, such as the view corridors. And in terms of the retail commercial, why would you come to this space? What would you want to? Is it ice cream? Is it coffee? Is it, what are those experiences you want to have? Now, we do have some of that information from the earlier exercise, and we have some of that information from the strategic plan as well, where there's overlap. So I did that off the top of my head. Are we in the right lane?
I think so.
Headed in the
and,
right
and
direction?
I actually believe I heard you mention that presenting scenario 2 as a bad option might do exactly what it did for us, which is elicit some opinions and some feelings. So is that something that could be strategic?
Yeah, let us come back and present something to you. I was merely just trying to provide some context because I don't think that this is necessarily to say the council wants to see this as much as it is let the public react to it and let them give us their feedback. Because what I can tell you, when we went through this exercise in the past, the first question was how much is this going to cost the city? And so if we can go, well, this scenario doesn't cost the city anything, and they go, well, that looks horrible, or okay, or they go, and you go, well, that one doesn't look so bad, well, that one's going to require a subsidy because the market doesn't want to support that. It helps frame that conversation, and it helps give context. So we can strategize how to work that if it becomes an option to bring forward.
Okay.
So I think the big concern that I always have with reaching out to the public is saying, we have a project that is already $4 million in the hole before we even start, and people go, well, that doesn't sound very smart, why are you doing that? And so if you have that countermeasure to say, oh, by the way, we thought about what would it take to get to break even, here's what it would look like, then people go, oh, well, that doesn't work either. And then we can come back and say, well, this is what the reactions were to that type of, choice decision-making.
Okay. Well, I think with the scenario 1, I would just be really, really careful if there was a way to adjust it and have it not be 100% water. I don't know if there is.
Yeah, right. Well, you mean like for water consumption?
Yeah.
Well, we're not going to necessarily be showing the level of detail that we're sharing with you tonight to the public. This is really for you guys to understand what's behind the decision-making. And one other thing about the water, and we've mentioned this in a couple of other separate conversations with council, is that through the integrated resource plan, they identified that there's 150 that they plan for at this site. There's additional capacity that we have for water augmentation, but it might impact other opportunities that we also mentioned tonight as well. So it really becomes more of a, where do we want to put those eggs in which basket type of a conversation, which is a different, separate thing altogether. So
Okay.
I'm hearing less density is what I'm hearing from you guys. That's one of my takeaways from tonight.
I think so too.
And so I think, when we look at that, that's, could be part of the ultimate program.
Okay. Councilmember Burns.
Hi, sorry, just to completely contradict that statement. I don't know why we're obsessed with ownership in this space. It's really bothering me. Because 42% of our population is renters. That's almost half. Okay, like let's just be realistic here, okay? And my blood pressure spikes every time we have this conversation, okay? Let's just, I understand like step housing, but when City Manager Guider also said that is a priority in like whatever questionnaire this is, I don't think that that's a fair question to ask our residents, because clearly half of them don't own a home. So we're building something that's completely out of their reach. And it's unkind, and it's unfair, and we can't keep talking about like, oh, we want a place for community, but only for people of certain socioeconomic status. Thank you.
No, I agree with you. My hope and dream, if I get to have those, is that we would have some element of habitat build there, because we don't have, I think that would be a nice addition on that site. But no, I agree with you. I think at some point, there was an iteration that had senior housing on this site.
That is correct.
Yes.
Yeah, we had that was part of the development program with the previous P3 was a AMI restricted housing product.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, there's been other, we need housing. There has to be some. We have to provide units in some form. Yeah. No, I appreciate the perspective. Well, and on occasion, we've made claims like they're less than, and that's not, yeah, and that's not what we believe about our residents. Okay. Did that help, or did we just spin you?
I think we've heard what we need to hear, and
Yes.
We'll bring back a summary with questions, a revisit of scenario 1. Brooke, do you have any questions based on, I've got a ton of notes.
I think
We'll regroup
we've taken a bunch of
internally.
notes here. I think realistically, what I'm hearing is that we need to come back with a more detailed engagement strategy on what we're going to present to the community and what that might look like for you guys to be able to see that. And then based on what we heard, we will modulate that information and we will endeavor to get that here in front of you on the 7th.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, guys. And really do appreciate the feedback, because this is what this process and this is what this exercise is intended to do. So don't feel like this isn't what it was supposed to be. This is exactly what it is and what it needs to be, so.
And please know that our questions and our pushback
Absolutely.
has nothing to do with our criticism of your work. You did exactly what we asked you to do. And
been much harsher.
Yes.
thank you for that. Okay.
Thank you again.
Yeah,
Really
We
appreciate
do
it.
appreciate it. Okay. Any public invited to be heard? Would you like to join us? You get 3 minutes. Now, it does say comments must be related to an item previously addressed by council tonight.
Josh Sears, Citizens Affairs Board. I live in 11768 Sherman Street, right across from Weber Lake. So this was an interesting meeting, I'll say that. My feedback on that is I rent a house from a corporation. So I pay $3,000 to live across from Webster Lake. So the whole renter-owner thing is obviously, something to keep in mind. But I also would say that I can't tell you how many times I've gone to Webster Lake and. I thought it was on, sorry. So I can't tell you how many times I've gone to EB Rains and Webster Lake and taken a picture of the mountain range over the water. So I will tell you from my estimation, I've done property maintenance and management for years. Even the 3-story townhomes are gonna get in the way of that view. Maybe the 5-story, if it was really tucked close to that thing, it wouldn't affect, but even the 3-story townhomes are in that area. And you're gonna want 3 stories because a garage, So, and example 1, you guys had commercial where the old city hall is. That's where townhomes should go because you're not blocking anything, So that would be my opinion. And, I think the less is more is probably a situation you should think of because, they brought up the whole fact that, a developer's going to want to come in and in 7 years, then they're going to sell it. Like, is that what you want as your centerpiece? Something that's sold as an investment? I would say no. But, this is where your community comes together. So I would really push that forward as a priority. And yeah, this is where, again, you guys have the benefit, North Glen has the benefit of being small enough that you guys can still have community. You can still have community policing. They can learn the community, right? So you're not, I work in Aurora, 500,000 people, right? I think they're just trying to keep their head above water. So you have the benefit to keep this community strong. And I will say, like, as a person that's come in and rented, being here has made me want to buy here and be involved in the community. So as much as it kind of sucks to have a 5-story building or options, you should consider both options because, again, housing is more unaffordable than ever before. So it's something to keep in mind. It's not, but I would say my overall take would be less is more. Cherish the space you have and make it a community-driven center because that's what it is.
Nice.
Thanks.
Well, thank you. Thanks for sticking it out with us tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well done. All right, there being no further business, we are adjourned.